Chapter 8-19. The disciples of the mythical fire palace and the spirit cultivation sect advanced in a formation on the left and right of the Four Links Merchant Guild. Yu Qianqiu, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong followed behind them. The dense spiritual qi formed a mist that drifted in all directions, and exotic flowers and plants could be seen everywhere. The surroundings seemed to be forever white, and the sun, moon and stars could not be seen. What surprised Yu Qianqiu the most was that he realized that there was no night here. No matter how much time had passed, it was always white. It made people feel like they were trapped in a nightmare that they couldn't break free from. It was so unreal. When he asked Du Feng and Hui Yunlong, the two of them were also confused about this strange phenomenon. It was said that ever since the day the Divine Ruins Realm opened, the Divine Ruins Realm had always been like this. Many people had the same doubts, but no one could figure out what was going on. On the way, Yu Qianqiu discovered that the major sects were truly major sections. Their deterrence was clearly not ordinary. Some of the people with ill intentions would immediately retreat when they saw the disciples of the Fire Palace and Spirit Cultivation sect taking a detour. This was not because the disciples of the two great sects had high cultivation bases. After all, the disciples of the various sects that entered the ruins of God had similar cultivation bases. The key was that they could not afford to provoke their backers. Otherwise, even if they gained an advantage in the ruins of God, it would bring disaster to their sects when they went out. The fighting and killing in the surroundings was endless. Tens of thousands of sects and hundreds of thousands of people were fighting with each other. It would be strange if they could live in peace. In short, it was those small sects that suffered from the calamity. They tried their best to hide and search for rare treasures, but they would always run into robbers who blocked their way. What he saw and heard along the way confirmed the saying that the weak were prey to the strong. The teams with weak backgrounds were angry, but they were forced to hide and flee. The teams with strong backgrounds were unscrupulously robbing the bright tribulations. Of course, the disciples of those big sects were not just for show. The sects behind them could stand tall in the immortal world without collapsing, so naturally they had the ability to show off. The techniques that the disciples cultivated must be unique, and this was also the capital for them to be arrogant. Yu Qianqiu sighed, but he laughed coldly in his heart. He wanted to go back and see how the 300 people he brought were doing. He wondered if they had gotten used to it. But after thinking about it, he dispelled this idea. Although those 300 people came from the human world of cultivation, none of them were easy to deal with. They were all people who struggled to survive in the narrow space of the human world. The disciples of the various sects in the immortal world with superior conditions couldn't compare to them. Those 300 people could be said to be the elites of the elites in the world. As long as they had a suitable cultivation base as a guarantee, they could be thrown anywhere in the immortal world and become an ambitious and ruthless person. The reason why he brought them here this time was to let them go through a period of adaptation from the human world to the immortal world, and eliminate their subconscious fear of the immortal world after living in the human world for a long time. As long as these people's mentality was right, they would be of great use in the immortal world in the future, and they would become his right-hand men. He needed to slowly control and grasp the process. In fact, Yu Qianqiu's initial plan was to wait for the Divine Ruin Realm to be opened for a month before bringing the Utopia army here to search for spirit herbs. However, there was a very practical worry that made him dispel this idea. Once the Divine Ruin Realm was closed, no one knew what the situation inside was like. Furthermore, every member of the Utopia army was only at the tribulation stage, so they couldn't afford to take too much risk. However, he was eager to obtain the immortal herbs that could make him rich. There was definitely a limit to one person's ability, so he set his sights on the soul formation stage lords of the various countries. These people had more experience than the members of the Utopia army. To put it bluntly, the Utopia army could be used as the core combat power, but it was not suitable for them to go out and fight alone. In addition, the Immortal Palace restricted the entry of the various sects, so the Divine Ruin Realm became the best place for the lords of the various countries to train. Mu Tianjiao had just led a group of people over a small hill when they saw a group of people vigilantly looking around. In the middle of the group, a few people were quickly digging out a white plant root that was as thick as an arm from under a rock. There were only 20 people in this group, and when they suddenly realized that a group of people had appeared on the hill and were staring at them, they immediately became nervous. After seeing that it was Mu Tianjiao who was leading the group, the person holding the white plant root was stunned. He quickly stuffed the thing into his storage bracelet, then chuckled and said, "Enemies always meet. I was looking everywhere for your 4 links Chamber of Commerce, but I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. This person was called Li Lanting, and he was none other than the leader of the 8 links Chamber of Commerce's team to enter the Divine Ruin Realm. Before entering, he had received a warning from the 8 links Chamber of Commerce's president, Qi Fengsheng. If they met anyone from the 4 links Chamber of Commerce, they were to kill them all. Mu Tianjiao was also stunned. She didn't expect to meet people from the 8 links Chamber of Commerce under such circumstances. Almost as soon as their gazes met, a fierce look flashed across Mu Tianjiao's pretty face. She waved the silver shield in her hand and decisively shouted, "Kill!" As soon as the words left her mouth, she rushed toward the other party without hesitation. Tao Zhong and the others were stunned. This group of people had always been hiding and keeping a low profile, and they had never taken the initiative to attack anyone. Mu Tianjiao had always been cautious, leading everyone on the edge of danger with fear and trepidation. They didn't expect that she would go crazy now. Everyone was stunned for a moment, but they immediately remembered that they had a powerful backer behind them. They immediately shot out and took the initiative to attack. The playful smile on Li Lanting's face froze and he looked a little stunned. It was already good that he didn't settle the score with them, but the 4 links Chamber of Commerce actually took the initiative to come to their deaths when they were at a disadvantage. He immediately shouted with a ferocious expression, "Attack!" The two groups of people quickly and fiercely collided, pushing the battle to its climax. Although Mu Tianjiao's figure was petite and looked like a weak woman, she was like a completely different person when she was fierce. She stared at Li Lanting with no regard for her life, and with the silver shield protecting her body, she entangled Li Lanting and fought with all her might. In the end, it gave Li Lanting a fright and she was almost unable to withstand the blows. She retreated as she dealt with them, shouting, "Stop her!" After all, the 8 links Chamber of Commerce had the advantage in numbers, and had a few more people than the 4 links Chamber of Commerce. Hearing Li Lanting's shout, a few people immediately dashed over to intercept Mu Tianjiao. Mu Tianjiao, who had been attacking wildly, immediately fell into a dangerous situation. Dealing with 4 people at the same time was already beyond her ability. Fortunately, she had 2 treasures in her hands. The silver shield for defense glowed with a silver light, and in the blink of an eye, it had already blocked several fatal attacks for her. Because of her fearless bravery, it immediately reduced the pressure on the other team members. Apart from her, who was fighting 1 against 4, the other team members were fighting 1-on-1. In such a critical situation, Mu Tianjiao should be thinking of a way to escape, but she raised her cultivation to the limit and fought with all her might under the siege of 4 men. She was actually far from being as strong as she appeared to be. Her heart was like her appearance, just a weak woman. She also wanted to live the life of the young miss of another family. But the 4 links Chamber of Commerce was already in a precarious situation. Her father's character was weak, and it was not enough to support the overall situation. She believed that as an only daughter she had no way out. At this time she could only constantly strive for self-improvement. Hence, she shouldered the heavy burden without any hesitation, and decided to shield her father from the wind and rain. The attacks from the 4 people surrounding her were like a mountain. The web between Mu Tianjiao's thumb and forefinger had already split open from the impact, and fresh blood flowed out. But she still gritted her teeth with a pale face. She knew that Yu Qianqiu and the rest would see it soon because they were not far from her team. She knew that at this time she had to become stronger. She could not let everyone look down on her. She had to hold on and let everyone see that even though she was a woman, she did not lose to a man. She knew that if she wanted to gain the respect of others, she had to do things that would make others look at her in a different light. Otherwise, respect would not come even if one begged for it. She knew that this was an opportunity for the 4 links Chamber of Commerce. Borrowing her relationship with Yu Qianqiu, if her contribution could gain the favor of the mythical Flame Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect, and establish a certain relationship after the matter, even if it was just a little bit of cooperation, then the 4 links Chamber of Commerce would be able to walk out of this dangerous situation. Her thinking was not wrong. In order to gain, there must be a price to pay. But for a woman like her to do such a thing, it was a little too heavy. That delicate shout of "kill" came from afar, and in addition to the intense sounds of fighting that followed, it immediately alerted Yu Qianqiu and the other 2. The 3 of them looked at each other and immediately flew up, directly to the hillside in front of them. Scanning the battlefield, the three of them immediately fixed their gazes on Mu Tianjiao, who was surrounded by 4 men. Mu Tianjiao's figure was originally petite, and at this moment, under the frenzied attacks of 4 men, she looked so helpless. Her resistance was already very messy, and it was obvious that she was barely holding on. But even so, she still fought to the death without retreating, and in the midst of her messy resistance, she did not forget to find time to counterattack. That unyielding aura caused Du Feng and Hui Yunlong to be slightly shocked. They saw something that was rare even in the immortal world, and that thing was called backbone. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes as he stared below. He could already see the background of the other party from their clothing. He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, 8 Links Chamber of Commerce again, they are really tired of living. The commotion of the battle naturally alerted the mythical Flame Palace and Spirit Cultivation sect disciples on both sides. 2 groups of people appeared from the left and right, and their gazes were fixed on their respective leaders. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong's eyes flashed with killing intent as they shouted in unison, "Kill!" The disciples of the 2 great sects rapidly formed an encirclement and quickly joined the battle. The situation was instantly reversed. A few screams rang out. Li Lanting looked at the figures that were flashing in all directions and anxiously shouted, "Everyone, please show mercy. We can discuss this as long as we have it, we can give it to you." Hui Yunlong's pair of fiery red eyebrows raised and he angrily said, "I want your life. Kill them all, don't leave a single one alive." As he gave the command, a red light erupted from below. The bodies of the Lifefire Palace's disciples all released 2 balls of red fireballs that danced in the air. Chapter 8:20. As soon as the fist-sized fireballs appeared, they nimbly shot towards the disciples of the Bada Chamber of Commerce. Li Lanting exclaimed, "Mythical Fire Palace. Retreat. Don't touch it." Unfortunately, it was too late. Many of the Bada Chamber of Commerce's disciples subconsciously released their flying swords to block the fireball. Who knew that when the flying swords hit the fireball would immediately collapse into countless stars. The exploding sparks seemed to have a mind of their own as they drew lines of fire towards the attackers. The 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce disciple was shocked and immediately released his chi of vigor to defend himself. Who would have thought that the sparks would not be extinguished? They swarmed over and touched the chi of vigor, causing the fire to rise. In an instant, the person hiding in the chi of vigor was wrapped into a bright red fireball. There were also disciples of the Bada Chamber of Commerce who were trying to teleport away. However, the sparks that were scattered all around had already sealed off the surroundings. There was no space for them to teleport safely. Those disciples of the Bada Chamber of Commerce who had underestimated the power of the sparks immediately suffered a calamity. They crashed into the sparks that were densely woven like a net and were instantly ignited into flames. Ah! Several mournful screams rang out as the people on fire struggled in the air, trying to extinguish the flames on their bodies. However, these flames were extremely fierce. They were like maggots that could not be extinguished at all. They wrapped around their bodies and burned crazily. These people did not fly far before they saw rays of mysterious light shooting out from the hands of the Spirit Cultivation sect disciples, killing the people on fire who were trying to escape. After these flaming men fell to the ground with a thud, they struggled a little and then stopped moving. Piles of flames burned on the undulating hills around them, and a burnt smell filled the air. Yu Qianqiu's gaze fell on the hands of the Spirit Cultivation sect disciples. He saw that each of them was holding a long and narrow silver token in one hand. It was about 2 feet long, wide at the top and narrow at the bottom, and the wider it was, the thinner it was. The sharp end was like an iron pestle in one's hand, and the cloud pattern on the token was engraved with the word Spirit. The mysterious light that shot out from the hands of the Spirit Cultivation sect disciples was this item. This was the first time that Yu Qianqiu had seen someone use this as a magic treasure. At this moment, the Spirit Cultivation sect disciples suddenly shouted in unison, "Break!" The token in his hand had already transformed into a beam of light and shot out. Its sharp tip was like a steel needle that had punctured a balloon, easily piercing through the 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce's disciples' protective aura. As soon as the protective aura was broken, the raging flames immediately collapsed and converged, instantly attaching to the person inside and burning. Ah! Miserable screams rang out as the mystic light shot into the raging flames, easily piercing through them and immediately ending the ear-piercing screams. One by one, the burning men fell to the ground, emitting a disgusting burnt smell. The members of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce stood there blankly. Once the two great sects made their move, they no longer had the chance to intervene. In the blink of an eye, the battle was over. Compared to their bitter struggle, the methods of the two sects were indeed much stronger. Xianxia's gaze landed on the burning corpses, revealing a thoughtful expression. He was previously shocked by the fire-controlling methods of the mythical Fire Palace disciples. Only later did he realize that there was something in the fireball that was released. It should be something similar to oil. It was not as he had thought, that they could use the same method to control the flames as he did. After it was over, Mu Tianjiao flew over with her messy hair. She bowed to Du Feng and Hui Yunlong. "Thank you for your help, otherwise I, Mu Tianjiao, would have lost my life here. Miss Mu, you're too polite. We're allies, so it's only natural for us to help each other." Du Feng paused as he stared at Mu Tianjiao's bloody palm. He frowned and asked, "Is Miss Mu's hand all right?" Hui Yunlong, who was at the side, had already taken out a fragrant immortal pill and handed it over. "The effect of this immortal pill is not bad. It will be good for your injury if you consume it." This. Mu Tianjiao hesitated for a moment, but still accepted it with gratitude. She consumed it in front of everyone, not afraid of being poisoned. Hui Yunlong immediately laughed. "Miss Mu is a straightforward person." Xianxia's nose twitched slightly, as if he could faintly smell the fragrance of another immortal pill. He glanced to his side and happened to see that Du Feng was also holding an immortal pill in his hand. However, seeing that Hui Yunlong was already one step ahead of him, the immortal pill was gently grasped and hidden in his palm, no longer letting others see it. There was a faint and calm smile on his face. Xianxia raised his brows, looking left and right at the two fellows' gazes. He discovered that the way they looked at Mu Tianjiao seemed to be a little strange. They had lost the calmness from before, and there were a few hints of peculiarity in their eyes. The corners of Xianxia's mouth curled up, revealing a smile that he did not reveal. He then said with a solemn expression, "This 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce is really despicable. I didn't think that they would still be unwilling to let your 4 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce off even after reaching the Divine Ruin Realm. It seems like they won't be satisfied until they force you and your father to death. They're going too far." Mu Tianjiao bit her lip and said with grief and indignation, "They never wanted to let us go. When we were outside the Divine Ruin Realm, Qi Fengxing once came to the 4 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce's shop and threatened us. He said that he wanted me to be his woman in bed. If I didn't agree, we can forget about returning to the 4 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce safely." The gazes of the two men on the left and right turned cold at the same time. Du Feng frowned and said, "Qi Fengxing? Could he be the president of this 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce?" Mu Tianjiao bit her lip and nodded silently. Du Feng coldly snorted and said, "An unknown little chamber of commerce actually dares to be so arrogant. If there's a chance, I'd like to see it for myself." "Miss Mu, don't be afraid." Hui Yunlong patted his chest and said, "Leave this to me. Isn't it just a lousy chamber of commerce? When we get out of the Divine Ruin Realm, I'll help you kill that Qi Fengxing. He actually wants to find a woman in bed with him, that dog." Mu Tianjiao looked at him speechlessly. She did not know whether what he said was true or false, but she still bowed and thanked him. Hui Yunlong casually waved his hand and said, "Since we're allies, it's only right for me to help. No need to thank me, no need to thank me." Du Feng smiled faintly at the side, but that smile seemed a little unnatural. Xianxia silently observed the two of them and forced himself not to laugh. He finally confirmed his guess and then looked at Mu Tianjiao meaningfully. Although he did not know which of the two would become her protector in the end, he reckoned that the trouble with the 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce should be solved. There was no need for him to worry about this matter. Guan Tianli. Du Feng suddenly stared ahead and shouted a name. The few of them could not help but look over and saw a row of people in blue standing on the opposite hillside. One of them stared at them coldly for a while, then gently raised his hand, and the dozen or so people in blue quickly flew back and disappeared into the boundless fog. Looking at their clothes, they seemed to be the other group from Heartless Palace, right? Xianxia asked. "Yes." Du Feng said with a solemn expression, "I've dealt with this person before. He's the number one among the soul formation stage disciples of Heartless Palace and is very difficult to deal with. Looking at his actions just now, it seems that he already knows about his fellow disciples being killed. I'm afraid this matter will not be resolved peacefully. Hui Yunlong looked into the distance and snorted coldly. There are only 15 of them, we don't need to be afraid of them. I'm afraid that's the reason why they left. Du Feng slowly said in a low voice, if we can join forces, it doesn't mean that they can't do the same. With the rallying power of Heartless Palace, if they really want to gather people to join forces, I'm afraid we'll be in trouble. Yu Qianzhou watched as the mythical fire palace disciples below scattered white powder to extinguish the flames on the corpses, then searched for the storage bags and storage bracelets that were burnt black. As he looked, he took out a piece of white jade and played with it in his hand. He slowly said, if trouble comes, we'll solve it. There's nothing to worry about. After he said so, the others didn't say anything else. The three parties continued to move forward to search for rare treasures. However, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong agreed that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce couldn't be the vanguard anymore. With regards to this, Yu Qianzhou didn't have any objections and let Mu Tianjiao lead her people to follow behind the two major sections. However, some things were always like this. Good things didn't come true, but bad things came true. After half a day, the three parties that were searching for rare treasures all stopped and stared blankly ahead. Yu Qianzhou and the other two looked at each other and quickly moved to the front of the group. After seeing the situation clearly, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong's expressions instantly changed. There were 7 groups of people standing quietly in a fan shape in front of them. The group in the middle was the Heartless Palace disciples that had left after meeting each other. Guan Tianli's expression was solemn as he looked at them coldly. After lightly waving his hand, the two groups of people on both sides quickly spread out and surrounded Yu Qianzhou and the others. After the 7 teams dispersed, Yu Qianzhou looked around and roughly estimated that there were at least 160 to 70 people, which was more than 100 people than them. The mythical Fire Palace and Spirit Cultivation sect disciples quickly retreated and formed a circle to guard the outside. Mu Tianjiao bit her lips lightly and didn't say a word. Tao Zhong and the others were already shocked. Guan Tianli, what do you mean by this? Du Feng shouted. At the same time he shouted, a kacha sound was heard. Yu Qianzhou crushed the white jade in his hand into powder. Guan Tianli looked at them and said indifferently, Du Feng, Hui Yunlong, when I met you before I was already warning you. Who knew that you wouldn't know what's good for you and still mixed with the people who killed my Heartless Palace disciples. This is clearly a disgrace to my Heartless Palace. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite. The large triangular formation formed by over 300 demigod realm lords had already picked up their pace. First of all, they had more or less memorized the illustrations in the Jade archives, so they didn't have to stop and compare them. Secondly, they also realized that they had been following behind others to pick up scraps. The front had already been swept by others once, and the good stuff had already been taken by others. What they had found were things that were not of high value. Hence, everyone's thoughts flew to the front. It was also at this time that Yu Nantian, who was at the front, couldn't hold back his anger and couldn't help but attack a group of people who were passing by. He lit up the fire and in the end over 100 people swarmed forward. In just a few seconds the group of people were all killed with a kacha sound. In the end, when they checked the results of the battle, they discovered that there was an immortal herb worth over 10 million divine grade spirit stones in one of the people's storage pouches. Chapter 8:21. An immortal herb worth 10 million divine grade spirit stones might not be much in the world of immortals, but to these smugglers from the human world, it was undoubtedly an unbelievable amount of wealth. It was like a group of poor people who usually only had cornbread to eat, and they were suddenly served a table full of Manchu Han imperial feast. The immortal herb was carefully stored away. Everyone was nervous, excited and agitated, and they began to act crazily. Relying on their numbers, they would snatch it from anyone they met. After a few rounds of work under everyone's nervous cooperation, they suddenly realized something strange. After a few rounds of work, the fights were obviously thrilling and intense and even scared everyone out of their wits. But the strange thing was no one was injured. It was like seeing a ghost. Most of the 300 people were in the middle stage of the soul-forming stage, and the opponents they met were mostly in the late stage. According to the understanding of the cultivation world, a late-stage soul-forming stage should be able to defeat many middle-stage soul-forming stage cultivators, but the late-stage soul-forming stage cultivators here gave everyone a strange feeling. they looked like tigers and their momentum and methods were scary enough. But when they really fought, they gave off the feeling of a sick cat. It was really a waste of their cultivation. Lu Yanqing was most disgusted by everyone's fighting and killing, but she also knew that she might be able to make decisions for others, but not for Yu Qianchou. In the beginning, when people came to hand over the things they stole, she would always advise everyone to stop fighting and killing. But now that everyone had tasted the sweetness and their confidence was at its peak, how could they give up so easily? But it was not good to reject her, so someone immediately brought up Yu Qianchou saying, "We have no choice. I don't want to fight and kill either. But we can't disobey the torture envoy. Why don't you tell the torture envoy as long as he says something, we will stop immediately." Lu Yanqing was speechless. How could she persuade Yu Qianchou? That guy had never taken her, the world's most beautiful woman, seriously. Everyone was a wily old fox, and when they saw that bringing up Yu Qianchou was useful, they all followed suit, making Lu Yanqing speechless. Lu Yanqing had no choice but to pretend that she did not hear or see anything. She focused all her energy on the Jade Archive and the immortal herbs that everyone had sent over. After a massacre, the surroundings were a mess. Yu Nantian, who was wearing a white velvet robe, glanced at the corpses on the ground gracefully and said to himself with a mocking expression, "The cultivators of the immortal realm are just as old." His gaze fell on a severed hand at his feet. He opened his palm and immediately grabbed the severed hand. He slowly pulled off a storage bracelet from his severed hand and casually threw it away. Then he took out a piece of white silk cloth and blew a few hot breaths on the storage bracelet. While watching everyone collect the spoils of war, he wiped the storage bracelet with the white silk cloth. Only after wiping the storage bracelet until it was shiny did he put it on his left hand. He tossed the white handkerchief aside and raised his right hand and left hand side by side. There was a storage bracelet on each of his wrists, making for an interesting contrast. Yunnan Tian smiled with satisfaction. At this moment, Shu Exin of the Womanland flashed to his side. She stared at the two bracelets on his wrists and frowned. "Yunnan and we agreed that we would hand over the items and then distribute them together. Why are you wearing them on your own wrist?" Yunnan Tian said disapprovingly. "Who said I wasn't going to hand them over? I just wanted to try them on first." "You don't say. Things from the immortal realm are really good. It's too ugly to wear a storage bag on one's body. Look at this bracelet. It has a lot of space inside. The most important thing is that it's beautiful and elegant. It's no different from an ornament. I like it. If I can give one to each of my female disciples, I believe they will look good on their hands." Shu Exin handed the storage pouch to him with a look of disdain and said, "This is what we collected. Send it over." Yunantian withdrew his hands into his fluffy sleeves and frowned. "Your old lover Nongzhu is in there. You can send it yourself. Why do you want me to send it? I'm not your subordinate. I can go by myself." A trace of pain flashed across Shu Exian's face. She gritted her teeth and said, "He killed 3 of my sworn brothers. I don't want to see him again." Yunantian was stunned. Then he remembered that Nongzhu killed Huazongming and others on Xianxia Island. He shook his head slightly and said, "Shu Exin, let me give you a piece of advice. Let bygones be bygones. Now the most important thing is to work together and not to have internal strife. Think about how many pioneers in the cultivation world dream of achieving immortality. Unfortunately, they can't get it. Now the opportunity is right in front of you. You should think about it carefully." "Who said I want to have internal strife? I just don't want to see him again." Shu Exin carried the storage pouch and said angrily, "Are you going or not?" Yunantian sneered and said, "A woman should act like a woman. You look like a tigress. No wonder Nongzhu doesn't want you." "What did you say?" Shu Exian roared crazily. Yunantian snatched the storage pouch from her hand and disappeared instantly. When he came to the center of the triangular formation, he immediately found Nongzhu and complained, "Nongzhu, Shu Exian is too unreasonable. You should discipline her." Unexpectedly, after a long time, he saw Nongzhu staring at the front with a serious expression. When Lanfeng and Hu Changshou also noticed the abnormality. When Lanfeng asked, "Nongzhu, what's wrong with you?" Nongzhu took out a piece of jade and frowned deeply. She said, "When Yu Qianchou left, we each injected a strand of divine sense into a piece of jade to exchange information. The main reason was that he was afraid that we couldn't find him when we were in trouble. But just now I sensed that my divine sense had been released from the jade. He should have crushed the jade. What does Yu Qianqiu want to tell us? Hu Changshou pondered and said, could it be that he encountered some danger or found some precious treasure? Yu Nantian was stunned and said, it's okay to find a precious treasure, but please don't let anything happen to him. If something happens to him, no matter how many things we grab, it's useless. We can't get out and we can't go back. Are we going to be trapped in the divine ruin realm? Jigs. What can happen to that guy with his ability? Although Nongzhu said so, she was actually worried in her heart. She looked around and said solemnly, no matter what, since he crushed the jade, it means that he is summoning us. Immediately gather everyone and quickly follow me. Several people already felt that something was wrong. They did not dare to hesitate and quickly gathered people. After a while, more than 300 people gathered again. Under the leadership of Nongzhu, they flew all the way unscrupulously. The sudden gathering of so many people across the sky scared the small teams of various sects below. Fortunately, these people did not have any intention to attack them. After the disciples of various sects watched these people go far away, they all suspected that something big had happened ahead, or some precious treasure had appeared. Otherwise, it would be impossible for so many sects to gather together and act together. These people's clothes look varied. Why do I feel that they don't look like disciples of the celestial world sects? The crowd below thought as they watched them fly away. The person beside him laughed and said, there are no less than 10,000 sects, chambers of commerce and clans in the celestial world. Can you recognize all of them? The former frowned and said, these people don't have a uniform. Don't tell me that they are made up of people from hundreds of sections. The latter rubbed his chin and pondered, you don't say, it really is possible. I know one of them and have interacted with him once. He is a disciple of the Chaotian Palace. His name is Shui Mingqing. Mythical Fire Palace, Spirit Cultivation Sect and 4 Links Chamber of Commerce were surrounded. Du Feng looked around and shouted in a deep voice, what benefits did the Heartless Palace give you? You actually helped them to deal with us. We are all famous sects, there is no need to be so extreme, right? Aren't you afraid of causing a war between sects? Guan Tianli said indifferently, Du Feng, you think too highly of yourself. Do you think that the Mythical Fire Palace and the Spirit Cultivation Sect will start a war with the various sects for the two of you? Hui Yunlong flew into a rage. Guan Tianli, don't go overboard. Who doesn't know that your Heartless Palace's people are plundering and slaughtering disciples of other sects in the ruins of God? Could it be that you are allowed to kill others and others are not allowed to kill your Heartless Palace's disciples? Guan Tianli snorted. I didn't say that others are not allowed to kill my Heartless Palace's disciples. As long as they have the ability, they can come and take revenge on my Heartless Palace. Could it be that they don't have the ability to take revenge and they don't allow my Heartless Palace to take revenge? You guys killed all the disciples that entered the ruins of God. What will they use to take revenge on you? Hui Yunlong roared. Guan Tianli shook his head slightly. That's because they don't have the ability. Don't tell me you want to blame it on my Heartless Palace? You. Hui Yunlong was so angry that he was speechless. The eyes of Yu Qianqiu, who was constantly paying attention to the rear, lit up. He saw 2 figures descend from the top of a mountain not far away. Nongzhu and Hu Changshou had already arrived first. Actually, this place was not far from where the hundreds of people were. It was only a few dozen kilometers away. With their cultivation, it would not take long for them to rush over at full speed. Yu Qianqiu looked around at the crowd that had gathered to watch the show, and immediately secretly sent a sound transmission to the 2 of them. After making some arrangements, Nongzhu quickly flew back, leaving Hu Changshou to watch. Yu Qianqiu, who had been silent all this while, walked out from between the 2 of them and shouted at Guan Tianli, surnamed Guan, don't bully others just because you have more people. I am the one who killed the people of your Heartless Palace. It has nothing to do with them. If you have the ability, then come at me alone. Whether it's one-on-one or all at once, I will accept it. Guan Tianli said indifferently, I heard that your methods are extraordinary. I don't dare to take that risk. It's safer to bully others with numbers. As he spoke, he looked at the 2 sides and said, everyone, what are you waiting for? Let's make our move. At this moment, someone shouted from afar, bully others with numbers? Good. This is my favorite thing. Let us join in the fun. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a group of densely packed figures flying over from behind the mountain. Chapter 8:22. Hundreds of silhouettes scattered in the sky, surrounding Yu Qianqiu's group of more than 100 people. Everything happened so suddenly that the surroundings fell silent in an instant. Everyone looked at the group of people who had appeared out of thin air and discovered that each of them had an unruly aura. Their clothes were all different and it was impossible to tell which sect they were from. Nongzhu stood on a small hill and looked down. She secretly transmitted her voice to Xianxia. Did it feel good to be a loyal and righteous person just now? Then she asked loudly, who was the one who said they were bullying us with numbers? I like it very much, so I came to see who has more people. Damn it. If there was a chance to be a good person, it would be a waste not to do it. Xianxia immediately pointed at Guan Tianli and said, he said it. He is bullying us with numbers. Huh. Nongzhu rubbed her hands and said excitedly, good. Let's learn from each other. The people who were invited by the Passionless Palace suddenly became restless. No one expected such a thing to happen. In the blink of an eye they were surrounded and all of them were on guard. The people who were watching from afar also became restless. They knew there was a big show to watch. Some of them even hoped that these people would fight to the death so that they could take advantage of the situation. Guan Tianli's pupils suddenly shrank. He stared at Du Feng and Hui Yunlong and said, so you still have some tricks up your sleeves. No wonder you dared to mix with the people who killed the Passionless Palace's disciples. You purposely lured me to take the bait. I admire you. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong looked at each other in dismay. The two of them had no idea where Nongzhu and the rest came from. The blank expressions on their faces showed that they didn't know if they were happy or lucky. The disciples of the mythical fire palace and the spirit cultivation sect also looked at each other. Everyone was confused and didn't know what was going on. Guan Tianli furrowed his brows. From the expressions of Du Feng and the others, he could see that the two groups of people were not together at all. He immediately cupped his hands at Nongzhu and said, I am Guan Tianli, a disciple of the Passionless Palace. I wonder which sect you are from? We have no enmity in the past, so there is no need to make things difficult. As long as brother is magnanimous, my heartless palace will definitely remember this favor. His words sounded like he was using the Heartless Palace to scare them, but these people didn't even know what the Heartless Palace was. Nongzhu followed Xianxia's instructions and turned her head to look at Shui Mingqing beside her. Shui Mingqing immediately took a step forward, stared at Guan Tianli and roared angrily, Guan Tianli, who said we have no enmity in the past. My Skyward Palace's disciples were killed by your Heartless Palace's Che Mingqian, and I'm the only one left. I might as well tell you that these friends from various sects were all invited by me to take revenge. When he stood in the crowd, no one recognized him at first. When he stood out from the crowd, some people in the crowd who were watching the fun immediately began to talk about him, saying that they had seen Shui Mingqing and that he was indeed a disciple of the Palace of Heaven. Now the crowd was in an uproar. They didn't expect that the Heartless Palace would be so cruel that they even dared to kill the people of the Palace of Heaven. The Palace of Heaven was not an ordinary sect, but the #1 alchemy sect in the immortal world. In fact, as soon as Shui Mingqing arrived here and saw Xianxia and Nongzhu's performance, he immediately realized that he had been used by them. But he had no other choice. Besides, he also wanted to do this. As long as he could avenge the death of his fellow disciples, not to mention that he could not vent his anger, even if he did not bring back the rare treasures, he would still be famous when he returned to the sect, and his future in the Skyward Palace would be bright. A big sect like theirs was actually not short of money. Sometimes face was more important than treasures and money. That's right. Nongzhu looked around at the crowd and said loudly, although we have more than 300 brothers here from various sects, we have all been helped by the Palace of Heaven. Today there are disciples of the Palace of Heaven reporting the funeral, which shocked us greatly. I didn't expect such an inhumane thing to happen. Since the disciples of the Palace of Heaven are begging us, it's time for us to repay their kindness. Brothers, don't you think so? Yes. More than 300 lords waved their arms and shouted with righteous indignation. In their hearts, however, they were all laughing. How many years had it been since they played such childish tricks? The onlookers were speechless. The Palace of Heaven was indeed the Palace of Heaven, worthy of being the #1 alchemy sect in the immortal world. As long as they left one person alive, they would immediately attract a large number of helpers to take revenge. Oh my! More than 300 sects all sent people to fight back. This momentum was even stronger than that of the Heartless Palace. The most terrifying thing that everyone thought of was that if something happened to someone from these more than 300 sects, Would other people come to take revenge? More than 300 sects had entered the realm of the divine ruin, which was close to 10,000 people. Even 1/10 of them was not a joke. Guan Tianli's expression darkened. He stared at Shui Mingqing and said slowly, "Brother Shui, I'm afraid there's some misunderstanding in this matter. However, since it has already happened, the Heartless Palace will not shirk responsibility. I will definitely report to the sect after this. I believe that the Heartless Palace will definitely give your Palace of Heaven an explanation. I hope that Brother Shui won't let the misunderstanding between our sects deepen. After all, there are so many pairs of eyes watching here. If the matter gets out of hand, it's impossible for it not to spread." What he meant was that he was using the name of the Heartless Palace to oppress people again. Hu Yunlong immediately laughed and said, "Guan Tianli, didn't you just say that anyone who has the ability to take revenge on the Heartless Palace can come? Why are you afraid now?" The 6 sects that Guan Tianli had invited to help were already exchanging glances with each other, as if they wanted to take the opportunity to escape. Yu Qianchou, who was silently observing the surroundings, narrowed his eyes and immediately transmitted his voice to Nongzhu and the others. "Why are you talking nonsense with them? Kill them." Guan Tianli glanced around and snorted coldly, "Shui Mingqing, you better think this through. Although we only have 160 to 170 people, we have many soul transformation final stage experts. Although you've invited many people, most of them are only at the soul transformation middle stage. It's not certain who will win." He was trying to calm the other 6 sections. Just as Nongzhu was about to make the first move, Yu Qianchou suddenly shouted from below, "Bullsh *T. Don't forget that there are still the 3 of us. Give me your lives." Before he finished speaking, he had already shot towards the people of the Heartless Palace. A group of densely packed black shadows burst out from his sleeves. The lords of the various countries couldn't hold back any longer and wanted to make a move. Nongzhu had just given the signal, but Yu Qianchou had already ignited the fire first. Not to be outdone, everyone immediately swarmed to attack. Mu Tianjiao clenched her teeth and slammed her sword against her shield. With a clang she shouted, "Kill!" She had already made up her mind to fight for the future of the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce, so she did not want to be outdone. Seeing that she had already rushed out, Du Feng and Hu Yunlong shouted almost at the same time, "Kill!" Rumble. The earth shook and loud noises rang out continuously. The few groups of people madly collided with each other. With the addition of the mythical fire palace, there was suddenly fire everywhere, and the place instantly became a pot of porridge. The surrounding people who were watching the battle quickly retreated, afraid of being implicated. The group of people from the Heartless Palace shot out their flying swords at the same time. No one knew what their flying swords were made of, but they actually blocked the attack of the black flame flying swords. Guan Tianli shouted angrily, "Kill him first." The flying swords that shook off the black flame flying swords immediately rushed over with the force of thunder. The joint attack of 15 experts at the soul transformation final stage was no small matter. Just the momentum alone was almost enough to make it hard for Yu Qianchou to open his eyes. Nongzhu, who had taken the time to glance over, was shocked. Just as she was about to break away from her opponents to help, she saw Yu Qianchou push out his palms in the air, and the 15 flying swords instantly shattered into silver powder. Immediately after that, Yu Qianchou shouted angrily, "Want to run?" Absorbing Star's great skill. Before he finished speaking, 15 clouds of white smoke exploded in the air. The black flame flying swords that were shaken away were like a flock of crows fighting for food, and they respectively burrowed into the 15 clouds of white smoke. Before the white smoke dispersed, hundreds of black flame flying swords had already followed Yu Qianchou to another place where the battle was going on. Such a ferocious scene made many people shiver uncontrollably. When the white smoke dissipated, only 15 storage bracelets fell to the ground. As for Guan Tianli and the other 15 people, they were already nowhere to be seen. Nongzhu, who had used the shape displacement transposition technique, was really speechless. The strength of Yu Qianchou had already exceeded her imagination. One Absorbing Star's great skill actually killed 15 experts at the soul transformation final stage at the same time. In her grief and indignation, she resolutely turned around and caught her opponents to vent her anger. However, to the soul transformation final stage experts from the various countries, the scene of Yu Qianchou killing the 15 experts at the soul transformation final stage instantly made them feel refreshed, and they felt a sense of pride, This is our world's #1 expert. Of course he's powerful. However, this scene was no different from a nightmare to the remaining disciples of the 6 sections. When they saw Yu Qianzhou rushing over with a group of flying swords, they were instantly scared out of their wits. They were already in a situation where they were outnumbered, and they were barely able to put up a fight. As soon as Yu Qianzhou arrived, they panicked and were instantly beaten to death by the people surrounding them. They died such an unjust death. When there was no work to be done in one area, Yu Qianzhou immediately flew to another area. However, wherever he flew to, there was a sea of dead and injured people there, and he didn't even have a chance to help. After this jinx had gone one round, the battle was over. The various feudal lords were already in a complete mess, and they were frantically fighting over the storage bracelets and storage pouches from the corpses. This scene had Du Feng and the others completely dumbfounded. When they came to their senses and wanted to search for the spoils of war, they found that they didn't even get a single strand of hair from the corpses. On the other hand, the feudal lords were showing off to each other. One of them was holding 2 storage bracelets and the other was holding 5 storage pouches, and they were winking at each other. Yunantian was the one who reacted the fastest. This guy was the first to rush to the place where Yu Qianzhou killed the 15 people, and he took all the 15 storage bracelets for himself. He was holding a large pile of storage bracelets and he couldn't stop laughing. He had completely lost the graceful and elegant temperament that he had always maintained. It's over so soon? Yu Qianzhou stopped in the air and was slightly stunned. To be honest, he hadn't fought to his heart's content for a long time. He thought that he could fight to his heart's content this time because there were many people, but who knew that it would be over so soon? Why couldn't he find an opponent with the absorbing star's great skill? Sigh. Yu Qianzhou looked into the distance speechlessly. He now thought that he had found a little bit of the lonely and invincible feeling of Bai Changchun. Chapter 8:23. The lords of the various countries who did not manage to snatch anything looked unwillingly at the disciples of the various sects who were watching the battle from afar. Their wolf-like gazes immediately made the disciples of the various sects feel that something was wrong, and they quickly retreated. This group of fellows were now extremely confident, and no longer placed the disciples of the various sects in their eyes. They exchanged glances and greeted each other, and there were indeed signs of them wanting to make a move. However, Nong Zhu and the others had already received Yu Qianzhou's secret instructions. They called out to the crowd and left the place. Yu Qianzhou looked at Nong Zhu, who had flown away with a stomach full of bewilderment. Didn't this old brat not want to worry about anything? Why was he so energetic when he was doing this? Du Feng and the others were speechless as they looked at the corpses all around them. They then looked at Yu Qianzhou with reverence in their eyes. Everyone knew that the reason why they were able to avoid danger so smoothly this time was because of Yu Qianzhou. The scene of the instant kill kept appearing in everyone's minds, causing their hairs to stand on end just thinking about it. After this battle, the people of the mythical fire palace, the spirit cultivation sect, and the 4 links chamber of commerce were almost unobstructed within the ruins of God. Due to Yu Qianzhou holding the fort, there was no need to worry about anything. They were not greedy. As long as others did not provoke them, they would not provoke others. They searched for all sorts of treasures on their own, and their harvest was not small. However, the situation within the ruins of God had undergone a huge change. The news of the disciples of the Heartless Palace and the other 7 great sects being annihilated was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. The disciples of the various sects all followed suit and started to gather people to form teams. In the following days, Yu Qianzhou and the others witnessed the fighting and killing. They could always see the situation of many bullying the few. However, Yu Qianzhou was no longer interested in participating in this liveliness. He was now wholeheartedly focusing on the various jade archives. Nongzhu and the other rascals would naturally take care of collecting immortal herbs and other rare treasures. What he needed to do now was to prepare for his life in the immortal world in the future. He needed to learn all the resources in his hands first. He didn't want to run out and still be ignorant. During this period, he would always secretly ask Tao Zhong about the various situations in the immortal world through voice transmissions. If Tao Zhong wasn't clear about something, he would ask Du Feng and Hui Yunlong for guidance. Although everyone was a little surprised, they said what they could and didn't hide anything. The words and actions of the latter two seemed to be trying to rope him in. Mu Tianjiao had always been silently watching his every move. In reality, Yu Qianzhou's identity as a loose cultivator had greatly moved her. She had always been pondering how to get Yu Qianqiu to officially join the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. The reason for this was that Yu Qianqiu's ability was beneficial to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. There were less than 10 days left before the Divine Ruin Realm closed. The thick white fog that blotted out the sky and covered the earth also caused the group of people to stop. Yu Qianqiu originally thought that the fog where everyone was already thick enough, but he didn't expect that the fog in front of them would be even thicker. It was likely that their visibility in the fog was less than 10 meters. He couldn't help but turn around and ask, "Does anyone know what's going on?" Everyone shook their heads with solemn expressions. Du Feng said in a deep voice, "Everyone, let's go. I didn't think we would already be here. We can't go any further, it's very dangerous inside." "How dangerous?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Hui Yunlong's pair of red eyebrows knitted together as he interjected, "The spirit qi in here is so thick. Although there are even more rare and valuable spirit herbs, there are also many fierce beasts that gather here to absorb the spirit qi of heaven and earth. Even ordinary immortal experts don't dare to trespass here. There have already been countless seniors who died here, and those who were lucky enough to escape have all repeatedly warned their descendants not to trespass here. Every time the Divine Ruin Realm opens, basically only the people of the Immortal Palace dare to enter. With our cultivation, it's very dangerous to barge in." "Fierce beasts?" Yu Qianqiu stared at the vast sea of fog in front of him and pondered, which is more powerful, the so-called fierce beasts or those spirit beasts or immortal beasts? Everyone's faces stiffened when they heard this, and they all looked at him with an incomprehensible expression. Hui Yunlong's mouth was wide open and he was already speechless. Du Feng coughed and explained, "Actually, the so-called fierce beasts include spirit beasts and immortal beasts. Fierce beasts are generally creatures left behind from ancient times. They have unique innate conditions which are long lifespans, and most of them are talented. Although the heavens have given them such favorable innate conditions, they have also given them an innate flaw that is difficult to overcome. If they can overcome this flaw, they can advance to become spirit beasts or immortal beasts." "Fierce beasts advance to spirit beasts or immortal beasts?" Yu Qianqiu had a blank expression as he asked in astonishment, "What flaw?" Du Feng subconsciously touched his forehead and explained with an awkward smile, "Although fierce beasts have long lifespans, most of them are chaotic and stupid. In terms of intelligence, they are not even as good as most ordinary poultry or wild beasts in the forest. This is their fatal flaw. However, once a fierce beast develops intelligence, it becomes a spirit beast. Once a spirit beast develops intelligence and understands a cultivation method that suits it, it can cultivate to the realm of immortal beasts, and at that time it can transform into a human form. The long cultivation process is much more difficult than that of a normal demon cultivator. A demon cultivator can transform into a human form after forming their core or nascent soul, but a spirit beast must cultivate to the realm of immortal beasts. However, the power of the two cannot be compared." Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly as he pondered. He couldn't help but think of Bai Suzhen. Bai Suzhen was a demon cultivator, and she had transformed into a human form a long time ago. Du Feng paused for a moment, then continued with a smile. "Actually, the immortal crocodile lord that you admire, who dared to talk back to the immortal emperor, used to be a fierce beast. It's just that after he cultivated to a certain level, he had the opportunity to become an immortal lord." Du Feng suddenly paused again. Everyone's gazes were fixed on the thick white fog in front of them. The fog started to shake violently and the ground started to shake violently as well. Before anyone could react, a few rays of golden light shot out from the white fog, and the white fog behind them instantly turned black, giving off a feeling as if a mountain was pressing down on them. Hiss! A roar that almost pierced everyone's eardrums shook the white fog, and a huge black shadow appeared behind it, rushing out of the white fog with a loud bang. A huge head with a bloody mouth suddenly rushed out, directly chasing after the rays of golden light. It was so huge, but its speed was unbelievably fast. The huge body that followed after directly pressed down on the dumbfounded people. Everyone was shocked and they all teleported away. Before Yu Qianqiu could see clearly what was going on, he saw a few rays of light explode, directly shooting at the huge head that rushed out of the white fog. Bang bang! Several loud sounds rang out. Ping! The huge head was smashed into the ground on the spot, shaking Yu Qianzhou and the others so much that their vision became blurry. They almost couldn't stand still and hurriedly flew away. "Bastard! How dare you chase after us, you're courting death." A thunderous roar exploded in the air, and a few rays of golden light had already appeared. All of them looked a little battered, obviously having suffered a lot in the thick white fog. Hiss! A long roar shook the heavens. Earth and rocks filled the sky, immediately forcing the others to retreat once more. Only Yu Qianzhou remained fearless. The earth and rocks couldn't harm him in the slightest. The huge head that had sunk into the ground lifted up once again, and the huge red eyes with a circle of golden patterns were filled with anger. The fangs in its bloody mouth were frightening, and its thick tongue trembled like a javelin as it roared. It could be seen that its anger had reached its limit. Only then did Yu Qianzhou see clearly what kind of fierce beast it was. It was actually a ferocious giant snake with a diameter of 10 meters, and its black scales spread out, emitting a disgusting stench. The huge body behind it was hidden in the fog and no one knew how long it was. At this moment, a huge pillar suddenly broke out of the thick white fog and with a boom, it swept towards the few people in golden robes in the air with a terrifying momentum. "Bastard! We can't let it live." 5 of the 6 people in golden robes waved their sleeves, and 5 rays of light shot out. Bang! It set off a monstrous wave and knocked away the huge snake tail on the spot. Another person in golden robes raised an ancient mirror in his hand at the same time. The mirror flashed with mysterious light like ripples, and a fierce ray of light instantly enveloped the entire snake head. Hiss! The huge snake let out an incomparably painful howl, and its long dragon-like body that was hidden in the fog immediately broke out of the fog with a boom. Yu Qianzhou was shocked. This huge snake was probably 150 to 160 meters long, and at this moment, it was curled up into a ball to protect its head, and it was rolling on the ground like a moving mountain, causing the ground to tremble. From the roar of pain one could tell that he was already injured. "This beast's skin is tough, but its eyes have already been blinded by my mystic light treasure mirror. Take this opportunity, combine the 6 swords into one and kill it." The 6 people turned into 6 golden streams of light and scattered, shooting diagonally into the sky. Suddenly there was a thunderous sound in the air and the fog suddenly broke open. 6 golden streams of light pushed a 10-meter-long hexagonal giant sword down from the sky at an astonishing speed, and in the blink of an eye, it plunged into the huge snake that was curled up into a ball. Bang! There was a loud noise and countless rays of light shot out from the huge snake that was curled up into a ball. In an instant Yu Qianzhou, who had surged out his aura shield, was still shaken by the burst of light and flew back dozens of meters before barely stopping. His aura shield had already collapsed, and the blood hanging from the corner of his mouth said everything. Hiss! The endless howl stopped abruptly, and 6 golden streams of light shot out from the body of the huge snake that was curled up into a ball. They flashed into the air, and the original bodies of the 6 people in golden robes appeared in the air, and each of them looked down coldly. The huge snake that was curled up into a ball slowly wriggled weakly, and suddenly seemed to have lost its strength. It collapsed with a loud bang and spread out on the ground, motionless. Under many of the hard leather armor there were bloody cuts and the 2 huge eyes became paste and blood kept flowing out. On the forehead between the eyes, there was a huge hole that was pierced by something, and red and white things were slowly flowing out. Chapter 8:24. Yu Qianzhou slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the scene in front of him in shock. The momentum and power of the 6 people joining forces to kill the giant snake made him gasp. Although he did not know what the cultivation of the 6 people was, the strength of the immortal realm experts was undoubtedly shown. He knew that with his current cultivation, it would be difficult to catch up. What shocked him the most was the ferocity of the giant snake. It took 6 immortal realm experts to kill it. Was this the power of a ferocious beast? He could not help but think of the situation when he saw Immortal Lord Crocodile's huge body at the Moon Lake. He wondered how powerful Immortal Lord Crocodile's real body would be. At this moment, dozens of golden streams of light flashed through the white fog and stood in the air with the 6 golden-robed people. All of them looked battered. There were about 80 of them. The group stared at the giant snake's corpse below. Was it killed by you guys? Yes. Why haven't the rest come out yet? Haven't they succeeded? We've succeeded. Those who should have come out have come out. The rest can't come out anymore. We've lost 16 people. The group of golden-robed people fell into a short silence after talking. Someone sighed and said, "Let's go back and report." "What about this giant snake? The autopsy is worth some money." Although Yu Qianzhou was not far away, he was not close either. In addition, they had their backs to him, so he could not tell who was talking to who. One of the golden-robed people looked back at Yu Qianzhou and said, "This thing has thick skin and flesh. It will take a lot of effort to dissect it. Money is a small matter. Let's go back and report. Let's just treat it as letting them off easy." "Let's go." The group of golden-robed people shouted to each other and turned into streams of light that shot into the distance. Only the remains of the giant snake were left in the place. Yu Qianzhou silently recalled the words of those people just now. He didn't know what the people of the immortal palaces were doing, especially those words about whether they had succeeded or not, which made him stare suspiciously at the dense sea of fog. Could it be that there was a treasure that even the immortal palaces coveted in it? Behind him, a group of people flew over and stopped beside Yu Qianzhou, looking at the pile of dead giant snakes in silence. They were Du Feng and the others who could not withstand the aftershocks of the battle and had run away. All of a sudden, Du Feng noticed the blood stain on the corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth and asked in surprise, "You're injured?" "I'm fine. It's just a small injury, it's not worth mentioning." Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and pointed at the remains of the giant snake. "That thing is ours. It should be worth some money." As soon as he finished speaking, Hui Yunlong exclaimed in surprise, "So it's the black dragon giant python." In a flicker, Hui Yunlong landed on the ground, caressing the giant snake's scales. Compared to the giant snake's remains, he looked like a small pebble. Hui Yunlong clicked his tongue. "This is a good thing, the scales on its body can be refined into many sets of defensive armor." Yu Qianzhou looked at Du Feng in confusion, but the latter explained with a smile. "The mythical fire palace is the #1 sect in the immortal world. Since this guy said so, it can't be wrong." Yu Qianzhou's figure flickered, standing on top of the giant snake's body, staring at Hui Yunlong below. "How much is this broken snake worth?" Hui Yunlong took a few steps back, looking at the giant snake for a moment before answering in a solemn voice. "Around 1 billion divine grade spirit stones. Its true value depends on what grade of treasure it can be refined into. This is related to the level of the artificer. The higher the grade of the refined treasure, the more valuable it is." "Only 1 billion? *CK Mashishi." Yu Qianzhou was a little disappointed. He didn't expect such a ferocious giant snake to only be worth 1 billion. Turning to Du Feng, he asked, "What are these immortal palaces people doing? Why did they make this beast so angry? It seems like it's chasing after them." Below, Hui Yunlong had already summoned the people from the Lifire Palace over. A group of disciples from the Lifire Palace touched the wounds of the gigantic serpent and sprinkled some unknown liquid onto it. A moment later, the wounds of the gigantic serpent burst into flames as black smoke mixed with a disgusting stench permeated the air. Yu Qianzhou and Du Feng immediately dodged far away to watch. They saw that the flames were using the flesh beneath the scales as fuel, quickly burning into the giant snake's body. Black smoke rose up and a foul smell spread far and wide. Du Feng frowned as he answered, "Other than collecting rare treasures, the immortal palaces people usually come here to look for fierce beast eggs or baby beasts that have yet to open their eyes. Most likely, they were discovered by this giant snake when they were trying to steal the eggs. That's why they chased after them." "Beast eggs? Baby beasts?" Yu Qianzhou was flabbergasted. Could it be that they want to tame a fierce beast? Du Feng shook his head. "It's impossible to tame a fierce beast. This is related to their ignorance. It's precisely because of their ignorance that they're very stubborn. They only believe in the first person they see when they open their eyes, treating them as their parents. Otherwise, no matter how young the ferocious beast you catches, as long as it opens its eyes, you won't be able to tame it again. It would rather starve to death than eat a mouthful of food given to it by others. You will never be able to raise it." "You're saying that only by bringing back the beast eggs and baby beasts that have yet to open their eyes can they be tamed?" Yu Qianzhou asked. Du Feng nodded. "Not only can they be tamed, their loyalty is also very high, incomparably loyal, the kind that will never betray you. Many sects in the immortal world favor them because of their absolute loyalty. Until the day they die, they will absolutely obey you, never betray you. A baby beast or a beast egg that has yet to open its eyes, even at the lowest price, can be sold for more than 10 billion divine grade spirit stones." So expensive? Yu Qianzhou asked suspiciously. No matter how loyal a ferocious beast cub is, how long will it take to raise it to be of use? Du Feng had gradually gotten used to Huang Xiaolong's ignorance, shaking his head with a smile. Don't forget, humans are the smartest. If a baby beast is raised by a fierce beast, it's still a fierce beast. But humans are different. We can use immortal pills to awaken its intelligence while it's still young, allowing it to cultivate from a young age. With human help, the time it takes to cultivate to become an immortal beast won't be any slower than a human becoming an immortal realm master. In the immortal world, people's hearts are hard to fathom. Only immortal beasts will be eternally loyal to you. Just this point alone can't be measured with money. While the two of them were speaking, the remains of the giant serpent had turned into an empty shell, and the flesh and blood inside were burned to ashes by the raging fire. Finally, Hui Yunlong strenuously stored the scales into his storage bracelet, filling up an entire space. Finally done, Yu Qianzhou's gaze fell onto the misty sea of fog and he was slightly startled. He suddenly thought of Nongzhu's group that had been walking in this direction. Those fellows didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They didn't know the dangers behind this misty sea of fog. Did they barge in? Then again he felt that it wasn't possible. If they encountered danger that they couldn't solve, Nongzhu would definitely crush the jade stone to ask for help. After a moment of hesitation, Yu Qianzhou said to Du Feng and the rest who were about to continue searching for rare treasures, "You guys go first, I'll look for you later." Amidst everyone's exclamations, Yu Qianzhou disappeared into the misty sea of fog. He wasn't trying to search for something in the misty sea of fog, but he was using the thick fog as cover to return to Utopia. After searching for a while in Utopia, Huang Xiaolong immediately locked onto Nongzhu's position. Although he didn't give Nongzhu the little silver ball, the jade stone in Nongzhu's hand contained a wisp of his divine sense, so he could also find her. Nongzhu was walking and chatting with Wen Lanfeng and the others with her hands behind her back, pointing around from time to time. The way they talked and laughed seemed to treat the divine ruin realm as a tourist resort, and they didn't seem to be on guard at all. Yu Qianzhou, who had suddenly appeared behind them, found it both funny and infuriating. He couldn't help but cough. They suddenly turned around and Nongzhu said in surprise, "Why are you here? Aren't you afraid of exposing yourself by being with us?" Yu Qianzhou looked to both sides and found that not far to his right was the thick sea of fog. It seemed that these fellows were sweeping along the edge of the sea of fog, in the opposite direction of Du Feng and the others. He couldn't help but point to the sea of fog with a smile and said, "Why don't you go in there and have a look?" They immediately looked at each other and Nongzhu waved her hand and said, "Don't mess around, kid. We caught someone before and asked them why they didn't go in. It turns out that there are many fierce beasts in there, and that's a place even immortal realm masters don't dare trespass. Not to mention we've already gotten a lot of things, there's no need to take that risk. No matter how much money we have, it's not as important as our lives." Mother Astersker. They're really cunning old fools. I underestimated their intelligence, making me worry for nothing. Yu Qianzhou's face lit up with joy. "You got a lot of things? How many?" Everyone smiled at each other, then Nongzhu chuckled. "There are more than 3,000 kinds of immortal herbs, and we've collected about half of them recorded in the Jade Archives. Although most of them are mid to low-grade Jade Archives, we calculated based on the market price and they're worth about this much." He held up 2 fingers. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. 200 billion divine-grade spirit stones? Other than Lu Yanqing, the others laughed in unison. Nongzhu snickered. Not 200 billion but 2 trillion divine-grade spirit stones. She took out a jade archive and passed it to Huang Xiaolong, saying, "Take a look, we've categorized them according to the prices in the jade archives. Everything is listed in there." 2 trillion? Yu Qianzhou was dumbfounded. He gulped as he took the jade archive and carefully examined it. As a result, he was shocked by what he saw. After a long time, he sighed and clicked his tongue as he said, "Although there aren't many high-grade spirit herbs here, our main goal isn't money. It's enough as long as we can gather the spirit herbs we urgently need." As he said this, he was taken aback. He raised his head to look at the others and said, "Damn it. How many people did you guys kill after robbing so many things?" Lu Yanqing bit her lips and the others looked at each other. Nongzhu shook his head with a solemn expression, saying, "We haven't counted them yet, but I'm afraid there must be more than 10,000 people." Chapter 825. Yu Qianzhou was completely speechless. A dignified immortal disciple from the upper realm had actually been killed by a bunch of loafers. He couldn't help but reveal an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Seeing this, Nongzhu immediately sighed and comforted him. I really didn't expect it to be like this, but what's done is done. The dead can't be resurrected, so what else can we do? Don't give me that. Xianxia waved his hand and said, we still have to live in the immortal realm in the future. You've killed so many people, you've made enemies with at least a few hundred sections. Let me ask you, when you did it, did you cut the weeds and eliminate the roots? If you want to do it thoroughly and cleanly. Don't leave too many clues for others to use against you. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of trouble in the immortal realm in the future. You all have to show your faces in the immortal realm in the future. It's fine to offend 1 or 2 sects, but offending hundreds of sects is no joke. They were all stunned. They thought that this guy resented them for killing too many people, but who knew that he didn't care about this at all? Instead, he was afraid that they weren't ruthless enough and didn't kill enough. He had truly underestimated the magnanimity of this demon ghost region torture envoy. Back then, he had killed people like scything flax. The corner of Nongzhu's mouth twitched and she said thoughtfully, it should be more thorough. Everyone is anxious to get their hands on the things and would rather kill the wrong people than let them go. Come on. I've worried for nothing. These guys aren't any good people. Xianxia immersed his divine sense into the Jade Archive to check it again. After confirming that the required spirit herbs had been gathered, he raised his head and said, all right, our main goal has been achieved. Gather everyone. The day of the Divine Ruin Realm's closing is not far away. I'm afraid that something might happen if we stay here for too long. I'll send you back first. Leave the alchemy to me. They looked at each other and Nongzhu said suspiciously, although there are many types of spirit herbs, the quantity of each type is not much. It seems that we can only refine a few immortal ascension pills. Xianxia nodded and said, we've already discussed it. These people will leave the Divine Ruin Realm sooner or later. We're going to set up an ambush at the exit. That way we'll definitely reap a great harvest. As he spoke, he waved his hand decisively. As expected of an elite who had been honed for a long time, they were indeed incomparable to the disciples of other sections. Stop. Xianxia waved his hand and said, I've thought of this method long ago, but you guys don't know that the Immortal Palace's people are guarding the entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm. Don't worry, with these items that are worth 2 trillion, they are the hope of us cultivators in the mortal world. I will have a way to let everyone forge an immortal body and run freely in this immortal world. Seeing that everyone was still confused, Xianxia took out the token and threw it to Nongzhu. This is the token of the biggest auction house and appraiser house in the immortal world. It was given to me by the granddaughter of sect leader Wan Gu Tong. Shui Mingqing is a disciple of the Heaven Palace, the largest alchemy sect in the immortal realm. The red-haired guy who was with me before is a disciple of the mythical Fire Palace, the largest alchemy sect in the immortal realm. Now that everything is in order and we have the capital, it's up to me to do it. Please believe me, it's just a matter of time. When the time comes, everyone will get what they want. They examined the purplish gold medallion. After confirming that it wasn't a fake, they looked at Xianxia in shock. They hadn't expected him to have connections with so many big sects in the immortal world. He really was capable. The largest alchemy sect? Why does that red-haired kid look like Nanming? Nongzhu muttered as she returned the token to Xianxia. She then asked suspiciously, then why did the granddaughter of Wan Gu Tong give you the token? He asked the question he was most concerned about. Probably because of my good character. It's a private matter. Why do you care so much? Xianxia gave a perfunctory reply. He waved his hand and said, gather everyone. Be careful, don't let Shui Mingqing suspect our origins. Although Nongzhu was a little unhappy, she still cooperated with Xianxia and the others to gather all the people. After all the people gathered, Xianxia sank Shui Mingqing into the ground again and led the group of people into the thick white fog that was like a white wall. After returning to the underground transportation formation, the anxious group finally relaxed. The reason why they were anxious was because they were worried that Xianxia would harm them. Now that they had returned to their homeland, they were naturally relieved. Xianxia led the group back to the sacred palace that the underworld saintess had opened up. He gathered everyone's loot together, including the 99 sets of illustrations and jade archives that had been distributed. It wasn't that he was stingy, but he still had use for these things. If he were to purchase them on a large scale again, he was afraid that it would arouse suspicion. He kept all the immortal herbs. He did not take any of the spirit stones, transcendent artifacts and the like. He directly threw them back into Nongzhu's hands. He looked around at the group and said, "Everyone, divide the remaining things among yourselves. You guys decide how you want to divide them. I won't interfere. It's best if you don't cause any trouble. These things are really nothing. There will be many more good things in the future. Everyone, please don't hurt our friendship. After all, we still have to work together in the future." Everyone laughed and expressed that there was no problem. Xianxia smiled and nodded. "There are some things that I don't know if I should say. With this transportation formation leading to the immortal realm, there's no point in everyone fighting over things in the human realm. Let's just return the human realm to the mortals. We from the cultivation world shouldn't interfere. If possible, it's best if everyone brings all the forces in your hands here to settle down. Also, the matter between you and the cultivation world of Wuxia should also stop. The so-called star bead has actually been brought back to the underworld by the Virgin of the Underworld. Even if you turn the cultivation world of Wuxia upside down, you won't be able to find it. Let's stop here. I'll take the immortal herbs with me. Everyone stay in the human realm and wait for my good news. I'll go back to the immortal realm first." As soon as Xianxia turned around, he suddenly turned back to the group and said, "By the way, you'd better take turns to guard here. Don't let anyone with bad intentions destroy the transportation formation. Otherwise your efforts will be in vain. At the same time, it will be convenient for me to find you. Also, about this trip to the immortal realm, just keep it to yourselves. Don't reveal it to your disciples or anyone else. This matter needs to be kept secret for the time being." After that, he flashed into the underground passage and disappeared. Everyone looked at each other for a long time. Nongzhu waved her arm and said, "Let's divide the things first." The quiet divine hall suddenly became lively. All kinds of voices mixed together. Finally, it was time to share the fruits of victory. The carvings on the dark stone walls seemed to be silently watching them. Xianxia went straight back to Utopia. Inside the ethereal palace, he called Bai Suzhen and Chu Ping'er over. He took 2 valuable immortal herbs, the kind that had multiple immortal herbs, and gave the rest to the 2 girls. He solemnly instructed the 2 of them to personally watch over the planting of this batch of immortal herbs until they had harvested the seeds of the immortal herbs as reserves. Only then would he hand them over to someone else to watch over. When the 2 girls learned that this batch of immortal herbs came from the immortal realm, they were extremely shocked. Chu Ping'er's eyes flickered as she said, "You went to the immortal realm?" Xianxia laughed heartily and said, "Of course. Just wait. It won't be long before I bring all of you to the immortal realm for a stroll. However, this batch of immortal herbs is related to whether we can establish a foothold in the immortal realm. So, I'll have to trouble the 2 of you to cultivate them as soon as possible. There are illustrations of all kinds of immortal herbs in here. They record the growth habits of various immortal herbs. You can refer to them." He had just given the 2 sets of illustrations and jade archives to the 2 girls when someone outside reported that Zhang Ping had arrived. Chu Ping'er had wanted to stay with him for a while longer, but seeing that he had important matters to attend to, she had no choice but to go out with Bai Suzhen. Zhang Ping was summoned by Xianxia himself. He took out 80 sets of illustrations and jade archives and gave them to Zhang Ping. He then asked Zhang Ping about the situation of Utopia's army. The master and disciple met and discussed for a long time before parting ways. When they left, Zhang Peng's expression was a little solemn, while Xianxia disappeared from the room. After returning to the divine ruin realm, Xianxia took a look at his surroundings. His gaze was fixed on the depths of the white fog, which was like a white wall. He had always wanted to see what was going on inside and whether there were any unknown secrets hidden inside. However, when he thought of how ferocious that huge snake was, he was somewhat apprehensive. In the end, he gave up and planned to go in and take a look when the conditions were ripe. After summoning Shui Mingqing out from underground, Shui Mingqing looked around and asked, "Where did they go?" Xianxia smiled as he took out 2 immortal herbs and handed them to him, saying, "Back then you gave me 1 immortal herb. Now I'm returning 2 to you. I didn't mistreat you, did I?" "Tri-element divine fruits," Shui Mingqing exclaimed. He took the 2 tri-element divine fruits and asked doubtfully, "Are you really giving them to me?" Xianxia immediately patted his chest and boasted, "I'm a person who doesn't care about anything, but I always keep my promises." I never go back on my word. I promised to give you the immortal herbs when I return to the sect, so naturally I have to fulfill my promise. Brother Shui, you don't have to doubt me. How could Shui Mingqing know that Huang Xiaolong was the kind of person who would flaunt his good points and eat them as if they were food? Shui Mingqing held the immortal herbs in his hands and fell silent for a long time. The rims of his eyes actually turned slightly red. Finally, he slowly raised his head and said, I recognize you as a friend. I know you're a capable person as long as you don't mind. In his life, other than his parents, no one had ever treated him so well. 2 tri-element divine fruits worth 600 million divine grade spirit stones were given to him just like that. He understood that he had avenged his fellow sect member's death. If he brought these 2 immortal herbs back with him, there was no doubt that the path of cultivation in Skyward Palace would be completely open to him. Little did he know that Yu Qianzhou was a person who was not afraid of spending money. As long as he could achieve his goal, forget 600 million, he would even spend 6 billion and 600 billion without hesitation. Of course, the premise was that the return must be greater than his investment. Otherwise, he would be very stingy, splitting a piece of spirit stone into 2 petals. Chapter 826. Stop being so disgusting. Let's go and get ready to leave the Divine Ruin Realm. Yu Qianzhou patted him and pulled him along the white fog wall. Shui Mingqing looked in the direction and asked suspiciously, Aren't you going to leave the Divine Ruin Realm? I was hired by the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. Naturally, I have to find them and go out together. Yu Qianzhou explained with a smile. The 2 of them flew all the way and began to chat. Under the guidance of Yu Qianzhou, the 2 of them discussed what to do after leaving. In less than half a day, the 2 of them finally caught up with Du Feng and the others who were following the fog wall in the opposite direction. Everyone had been worried that something would happen to him when he entered the depths of the fog. Now that he had returned safely, they were finally relieved. However, seeing that he had brought Shui Mingqing along, they all felt a little curious. No one knew the relationship between the 2 of them. Shui Mingqing, a disciple of Chaotian Palace. Everyone should have met before. Yu Qianzhou pointed at Shui Mingqing and smiled. My new friend. If you don't mind, you might as well make friends. Spirit Cultivation Sect Disciple Du Feng. Mythical Fire Palace Disciple Hui Yunlong. 4 Links Chamber of Commerce's Mu Tianjiao. The 3 of them immediately introduced themselves politely, not daring to show the slightest bit of contempt. It had to be known that Shui Mingqing had gathered more than 300 sect disciples for revenge. Could be said that everyone was shocked. A person with such rallying power, even if he didn't have the support of the sect behind him, he would still be an extraordinary person. Everyone had been secretly eager to make friends with him, but they didn't expect to be called over by Yu Qianzhou. They all secretly admired Yu Qianzhou's communication skills. Shui Mingqing greets my friends. I hope to have more contact in the future. Shui Mingqing cupped his fists. Although he didn't know the origin of the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce, he knew that the Spirit Cultivation Sect and the Mythical Fire Palace were among the top 50 sects in the immortal world. To be able to make such friends would not be bad for his future cultivation. Du Feng's eyes lit up and said, To be able to meet such an outstanding talent like Brother Shui, I can't ask for more. Hui Yunlong smiled and nodded. That's right, it's my honor. Since we are friends, there is no need to be so polite. Shui Mingqing waved his hand in shame. He secretly glanced at Yu Qianzhou and his heart was filled with gratitude. If he hadn't been lucky enough to meet Yu Qianzhou, he would have lost his life long ago. How could he still stand here and make friends with the disciples of other big sects? Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, Brother Du, Brother Yunlong, we're all friends now. I'm afraid I'll need your help with something when we get out. As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed at Shui Mingqing. Everyone saw how Brother Shui gathered people to take revenge. Brother Shui's fellow disciples from Skyward Palace were all killed by Heartless Palace. I'm afraid that after you go out, you will inevitably be scolded by your sect. I hope the 2 of you can use the influence of your big sects to support Brother Shui after you leave, so that he won't have a hard time explaining himself to the sect. Hui Yunlong immediately asked curiously, Brother Shui has so many friends from other sects to help you. You can just pull some of them out, right? Shui Mingqing smiled bitterly and said, Brother Yunlong might not know, but those friends are from some small sections. Helping me take revenge this time is equivalent to offending Heartless Palace and a few other large sections. Fortunately, they are not famous, so no one knows them. How can I pull them out after I get out and let Heartless Palace see them and hold a grudge? Isn't that harming them? But the two of you are different. Both of you are disciples from big sections. Heartless Palace and the other sects will not become enemies with two big sects for the death of a few disciples who have not reached the celestial realm. Brothers, see if it is convenient for you. If it is not, then don't force yourself. I will think of other ways to deal with it. Actually, these words were taught to him by Yu Qianqiu along the way. Yu Qianqiu had been instilling a philosophy in him. This matter was a chance for him to make a name for himself. As long as he handled it well, he would fight for his own position in Skyward Palace. Otherwise, he would be like a flash in the pan. He could only be in the limelight for a while and then become a mediocre disciple of Skyward Palace again. Yu Qianqiu's guidance painted a beautiful prospect for Shui Mingqing, and it immediately caused Shui Mingqing's heart to palpitate with excitement. He asked Yu Qianqiu several times excitedly and apprehensively if it was really feasible. Yu Qianqiu only said one sentence, "Brother, I will do my best to help." He had seen Yu Qianqiu's ability and capability. After thinking for a while, Shui Mingqing immediately clenched his teeth and decided to go all out for the sake of his future. Du Feng nodded slightly and said, "I see. Brother Shui is affectionate and loyal. No wonder you can make so many friends. I, Du Feng, will do my best to help you in this matter." Hui Yunlong patted his chest and said, "Brother Shui, don't worry. I will definitely think of a way to give you face." Although Mu Tianjiao, who was at the side, also wanted to express her support, she knew that her Four Links Chamber of Commerce was really unknown. If she were to offer her support now, she would be suspected of benefiting from it. Therefore, she simply remained silent. Yu Qianqiu looked at this scene with a smile. This was right. This was the effect he needed. If he wanted Shui Mingqing to play a role in Skyward Palace and help him, he first had to promote him and let him have a say in Skyward Palace. Otherwise, he would not even have the right to speak, so how could he help him? As long as Shui Mingqing told this lie, it would be equivalent to boarding his pirate ship. If he wanted him to sit firmly on his pirate ship, he had to use fame and fortune to tie him down. Then he would work hard to row this pirate ship with him. Once a mediocre disciple had tasted the taste of fame and fortune, how could he bear to give up? Du Feng and Hui Yunlong did not know the inside story. They agreed to help because they wanted to use Shui Mingqing to improve themselves. After this, Shui Mingqing would definitely become famous, and it was more or less beneficial to be his friend. Besides, in the previous battle, the two clans were already at odds with the Heartless Palace. Whether they helped Shui Mingqing or not, the result would be the same. Both sides had benefits, but they did not know that Yu Qianqiu, who was smiling at the side, had planned everything, hiding behind the scenes and waiting to cut off the benefits that belonged to him. "Shui Mingqing thanks you in advance." Shui Mingqing cupped his fists and said, "If you need Shui Mingqing's help in the future, don't hesitate to ask. Friends should help each other. Brother Shui, you're too polite." Du Feng and Hui Yunlong were showing off their generosity. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and scolded with a smile, "Stop disgusting people here. Everyone get ready. If you have anything to say, say it after leaving the Divine Ruin Realm." Hui Yunlong turned his head in shock and said, "You mean to leave the Divine Ruin Realm now?" Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded. Du Feng immediately frowned and said, "There are still about 10 days before the closed-door training in the Divine Ruin Realm. If we leave so early, I'm afraid it won't be easy to report back to the sect. I will give you a good reason. You can tell your masters about it." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed around with a hint of pointing at the country. "Along the way, you have all seen the situation. The various sects have already set off the wind of teaming up to snatch. Since we have already teamed up and I have helped you take revenge, you must also help me take revenge. In such a situation in the following days, it will definitely become more and more intense, setting off a storm of slaughter. I'm afraid it will be difficult to stop. The more people die, the easier it is for all kinds of treasures to be concentrated in the hands of a few people, and the easier it is for people to be jealous. If we don't go out now, when everyone's eyes turn red from killing, it will be difficult for us not to be implicated." Everyone was slightly shocked when they heard this. Thinking about it, it really was like this. Mu Tianjiao looked at Yu Qianqiu with a strange light in her eyes. She bit her lips slightly and no one knew what she was thinking. Yu Qianqiu paused for a moment before continuing. "If I'm not wrong, once this precedent is set, I'm afraid that the next time the Divine Ruin Realm opens, the various sects will discuss the matter of teaming up before they even enter the Divine Ruin Realm, so that their disciples won't be at a disadvantage when they enter the Divine Ruin Realm. Actually, to those famous sects, losing a few disciples or suffering a few losses is a small matter. Losing face is a big matter. Brother Yu is right, such a thing may indeed happen. Du Feng looked at everyone with a serious expression and nodded. Looks like we really have to go out early, what do you think? Then let's go. Hui Yunlong agreed. Mu Tianjiao bowed slightly and said, I will listen to everyone. Shui Mingqing naturally did not have any objections, so the group immediately followed Yu Qianchou and quickly flew towards the exit of the Divine Ruin Realm. Along the way they encountered several waves of robberies. When some people saw that the leader was Yu Qianchou, they immediately turned around and ran in fright. Although some people had heard of how terrifying Yu Qianchou was, they did not know Yu Qianchou. However, they knew of the mythical fire palace and the spirit cultivation sect. When they saw the two sects, they quickly retreated because they heard that the person who killed more than a dozen late-stage soul formation experts was with these two sections. Thus the journey was surprisingly smooth. After flying at high speed for about an entire day, they finally arrived at the exit of the Divine Ruin Realm. In the end, they encountered a few sects that had teamed up to ambush at the exit. However, when they saw that it was the mythical fire palace and the spirit cultivation sect, they continued to hide. It was obvious that they also knew about the destruction of the Heartless Palace disciples. The group did not stop and quickly entered the rotating white light in the cave. After passing through the unknown space where streams of light flew, a huge suction force pulled them out of the passage. Outside the ruins of God, more than 10,000 rich and powerful sects had sent people to keep an eye on them. Although there were people who were truly concerned about the safety of the disciples in the sect, most of them had the intention of supervising them, afraid that the disciples in the sect would hide some treasures after they came out. Secondly, they were afraid that some disciples would escape in advance out of fear of danger. If such a situation really happened, the rich and powerful sects would not be lenient towards such disciples, because under the watchful eyes of the public, they would lose the face of the entire sect and would be ridiculed by the world. The entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm suddenly emitted a white light. Immediately someone exclaimed, "Someone is coming out early." Everyone was in an uproar as they all stared at the place. The important figures of the various sects who were waiting in the shops immediately appeared in a flash. Tens of thousands of people floated in the air, all of them staring at the exit nervously with conflicted emotions. Actually, excluding those small sects that came for money, for many of the rich and powerful sects, although they had been making money, they did not lack money. The current gathering of the Divine Ruin Realm had actually become an occasion for the various sects to secretly compete for face. They were all eager to see others make a fool of themselves. Of course, if the joke fell on their own people, then it would not be funny at all. Chapter 827. However, not everyone who came out early was a coward who brought shame to the sect. There were also people who obtained rare treasures and came out early for safety reasons, but how could it be so easy to obtain rare treasures? Everyone had to wait and see what the truth was. There were some things in the world that were coincidental. Coincidences were rare, but there were always some. The leader of the Heartless Palace was an elder of the palace called Lu Tao. Lu Tao happened to receive a message from the sect, asking him to contact the people of Skyward Palace and Mythical Fire Palace to refine a batch of immortal pills and immortal artifacts. Thus, Lu Tao sent someone to invite Skyward Palace's elder Yafuzi and Mythical Fire Palace's elder Huo Lianqing to the Heartless Palace's shop to discuss this matter. However, Lu Tao was used to being arrogant and domineering. During the discussion, he kept using the reputation of Heartless Palace as the #1 sect in the celestial world to lower the price. This was not a business discussion, it was clearly bullying. This made Yafuzi and Huo Lianqing very angry. However, the two sects were doing business with the people of the world, so they did not fall out. They could not make the decision, and they needed to ask for instructions before giving a reply. Lu Tao was very dissatisfied with this, and almost with a commanding tone, he told the two to immediately ask for instructions. One was the #1 alchemy sect in the celestial world, and the other was the #1 blacksmith sect in the celestial world. No matter how nice they were not afraid of him. Just as they were about to wave their sleeves and leave, they heard movement at the entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm. The three of them temporarily put down all the topics and flew out together. They flew to the sky outside the Divine Ruin Realm and silently looked down. Humph! Lu Tao pinched his beard and snorted. It's probably a coward who ran out early. Yifuzi and Huo Lianqing looked at each other. The latter was a hot-tempered person and he had nowhere to vent his anger. Now that it was not related to business, he could not help but respond in an unfriendly tone. Elder Lu, you need to be careful with your words. If the coward who ran out early is a disciple of your heartless palace, then it's a bit, hee. Huo Lianqing, what do you mean? Lu Tao looked over coldly. Huo Lianqing said indifferently, I didn't mean anything. I was just going along with what you, First Elder Lu, said. Could it be that you can speak but I can't? Lu Tao squinted his eyes and there was killing intent hidden in his eyes. He said, if the disciples of the Passionless Palace dare to do something that is cowardly and disgraceful, I will kill them myself. At this moment a person beside him came over and said, how can the disciples of Heartless Palace be afraid of death? Even if they came out early, they came out with rare treasures. Hearing their conversation, Qi Fengxing of Bada Chamber of Commerce came over eagerly. He seemed to want to flatter Lu Tao. But this flattery was really in the right place. Lu Tao slightly turned back to look at him with some appreciation in his eyes. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he saw Master Yafu suddenly turn around and stare at him. Master Yafu said indifferently, where did you come from? Is there a place for you to speak here? Huo Lianqing also stared at him and said coldly, get lost. Qi Fengxing shrunk his neck and the flattering smile on his face turned into embarrassment. He squeezed out a smile and nodded, then stepped back. He originally came with good intentions to flatter and hoped to get a relationship with the #1 sect in the celestial world. He really couldn't understand how he made the other two sects dislike him so much that they didn't give him any face at all. He didn't defend them, right? How would he know the story behind the 3 sects? Take care. Lu Tao called out to him. He glanced at Master Yafu and Huo Lianqing and sneered. You two have quite a temper. Are you throwing this face at the Passionless Palace? Then he looked back at Qi Fengxing and said, you stay by my side. I'll see who dares to kick you out. The people nearby could tell that the 3 families were at odds with each other, and many people looked over. In all fairness, the strength of the mythical Fire Palace and the Skyward Palace was indeed inferior to the Heartless Palace. Huo Lianqing and Yifuzi would not go to the extent of fighting with Lu Tao for a person they did not even know. That would be too foolish. However, the two of them stared at Qi Fengxing with sharp eyes. Qi Fengxing didn't know whether to leave or stay. He had a bitter face and was about to cry. If he knew that flattering would result in this, he wouldn't have come even if he was beaten to death. He cupped his hands in fear and said, Junior won't disturb the 3 seniors anymore. Before he finished his words, Lu Tao made a nasal sound and said, who allowed you to leave? Didn't you come here to talk about cooperation with the Passionless Palace? Why are you in a hurry to leave? He was clearly competing with Huo Lianqing and Master Yafu. He wanted to slap their faces. Talk about cooperation with the Passionless Palace? Qi Fengxing was stunned. After he reacted, an ecstatic expression appeared on his face. He bowed and stood behind Lu Tao and said, Junior won't go anywhere. I'll listen to Senior's instructions. He finally figured it out. As long as he got close to the Passionless Palace and became their partner, whoever touched him would be the same as touching the Passionless Palace. At that time not many people would dare to touch him. Lu Tao nodded in relief and glanced at Huo Lianqing and Master Yafu with a mocking look. The two of them snorted coldly and didn't say anything. They just cast a pitiful look at Qi Fengxing, which made Qi Fengxing's heart tremble. However, many people from small sects cast envious looks at Qi Fengxing. At this moment, the entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm spat out a white light, and a series of figures flashed out. It was Yu Qianqiu and the others. Under the berating of the golden-robed guard at the entrance, more than 70 people quickly walked out to the field under the watchful eyes of the crowd. The ushers of the mythical Fire Palace, the spiritual cultivation sect, the Skyward Palace, Mu Bing, and Nan Tianlong also quickly rushed to the field and asked with concern. Why is there only one person left from the Skyward Palace? Could it be that these few sects found rare treasures and returned together? Lu Tao immediately looked up to the sky and laughed heartily. Qi Fengxing also laughed softly behind him. In the pavilion at the top of the mountain above the cave, the wind was leisurely and the field of vision was wide. Wuxia, the commander of the external affairs of the Immortal Palace, was sitting in the pavilion and drinking. After hearing the arrogant laughter, his gaze shot over like a sharp knife. Immediately, Lu Tao's laughter stopped abruptly and he quickly shut up. Wuxia glanced at the field at the foot of the mountain. After discovering that it was Mu Tianjiao and the others, his gaze paused for a moment, and then he continued to drink. Although Lu Tao did not dare to laugh loudly again, he could not help but reveal a mocking expression as he stared at Huo Lianqing and Yifuzi. The two of them looked at each other and rushed into the field. Du Kairen, the elder of the spiritual cultivation sect, also could not help but flash down. After the three of them came down, Hu Yunlong and Du Feng walked over together, bowed and greeted, "Father." After Du Kairen and Huo Lianqing looked at each other, they glanced at the people of the two sects, and found that there was not a single person missing. The two of them could not help but be puzzled. Du Kairen raised his hand slightly and Huo Lianqing nodded. He asked with a sullen face, "Yunlong, what is the meaning of this? Why did you come out early? Could it be that you did something that is greedy for life and disgraces the sect?" Looking at the actions of the two, it seemed that the relationship between the two sects was not ordinary. Du Feng and Hu Yunlong looked at each other and smiled. Hu Yunlong replied, "Father, you misunderstood. This trip to the Divine Ruin Realm was quite fruitful because the situation inside has changed greatly. I can't explain it clearly in a moment or two. I'll explain it to you later. In short, you just have to wait and watch the show." Seeing that the two of them could still smile, the two fathers were already relieved. When they heard that the harvest was quite fruitful, their faces revealed expressions of relief. In fact, Du Feng and Hu Yunlong were cousins and their mothers were sisters. The reason why the two of them took the risk to enter the Divine Ruin Realm was discussed by their parents. It was mainly to fight for a better opportunity for their sons to develop. This was why the mythical Fire Palace and the spiritual cultivation sect teamed up in the Divine Ruins realm. However, Du Kairen and Huo Lianqing were still a little confused. They looked at each other not knowing what was going on. On the other side, Yifuzi and a disciple of the Skyward Palace looked at Shui Mingqing with ashen faces, causing Shui Mingqing to be a little flustered. He did not know how to say the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Yifuzi asked the disciple beside him, "What's his name?" The disciple quickly bowed and replied, "His name is Shui Mingqing." Shui Mingqing? Yifuzi thought for a while and seemed to vaguely remember this name. Then he asked in a deep voice, "Shui Mingqing, let me ask you, why did you come out alone? Could it be that you were afraid of death and escaped in advance?" At the end of his sentence, his expression was already stern. Everyone's gazes were also fixed on him. Lu Tao, who was in the air, was sneering. Yu Qianzhou was speechless when he saw Shui Mingqing's terrified expression. He sighed in his heart. He was still lacking. He was lacking experience. Du Feng and Hu Yunlong exchanged glances when they heard this. They hurriedly walked over and bowed to Yifuzi together. Du Feng was even more emotional as he said, "Senior, the feat of your esteemed sect's brother Shui Mingqing is enough to make the Skyward Palace proud. How can he be afraid of death?" Hu Yunlong also nodded and said, "This junior dares to say that none of the hundreds of thousands of disciples from various sects who entered the Divine Ruins realm can compare to brother Shui Mingqing. At least the two of us are inferior." Du Feng immediately said, "Speaking of which, our two sects still have to thank brother Shui Mingqing. If not for him, I'm afraid our two sects would have suffered heavy losses." Mu Tianjiao, who was talking to Mu Bing, also walked over and bowed to Yifuzi. "Although our Four Links Chamber of Commerce is a small and insignificant chamber of commerce, we still have to thank Senior. If not for the help of your esteemed sect's disciple, this junior's small chamber of commerce would not have been able to escape safely." In an instant, everyone's eyes focused on Shui Mingqing. Even Wuxia, who was in the pavilion at the top of the mountain, stopped drinking and looked over. When Du Kairen and Huo Lianqing heard that a young disciple of the Skyward Palace had done a great favor for their two sects, they hurriedly walked over. Chapter 828. In just a short while the commotion had suddenly become huge. Yifuzi was stunned, a little confused. The anger that had just risen in his heart had been replaced by confusion, but he didn't know how to ask. Shui Mingqing stood there shyly, his head slightly drooping, a little afraid to raise it. He had never endured so much attention in his life and the pressure was too great. His palms and his sleeves were already sweating. He was truly the center of attention. "Brother Yu, won't there be any loopholes if we do this?" he asked via voice transmission. Yu Qianzhou smiled as he looked around. This was exactly the effect he wanted. He immediately transmitted his voice back. Worrying about anything is unnecessary. Just move forward bravely towards your goal. When you truly become a superior, you will realize that as long as you succeed, the false will be true, and others won't even have the right to question you. This is the difference between ordinary people and superior people. Ordinary people are always worried about being exposed when they lie, but superior people eat lies like a meal, and through lying they train their fiery eyes and indestructible body. If you are always afraid of wolves in front and tigers behind, then there will never be a day where you can stand out. Brother Yu is right. Shui Mingqing smiled bitterly and said, but I won't hide it from Brother Yu, I am really a little scared right now. What do you mean a little scared? You are obviously very scared. Yu Qianchou said disdainfully, what are you afraid of? Let me tell you, there are two kinds of people in this world. The more scared they are, the braver they become, and the more scared they become, the more timid they become. The former become famous and the latter live a mediocre life. Think about it yourself, which kind of person do you want to be? Perhaps he found that his tone was a little too harsh, but the other party still wanted to retreat at the last moment. How could this be? However, Yu Qianchou still softened his tone and said calmly, think about it, there are many young disciples like you in the immortal world, but how many of them have an opportunity like you? It's hard for them to have an opportunity to bear this kind of pressure in their lives. This is a hurdle, a chance to hone you. Straighten your chest and face it bravely. Once you cross it, you will get a chance to train and you will have the capital to succeed. After you experience this, you will find that many of the things that seemed scary before are actually nothing much. Other people's vision, mind, spirit, and courage are all trained like this. What are you afraid of? This unforgettable reprimand made Shui Mingqing suddenly feel enlightened. His eyes gradually became firm and he replied in a deep voice, Brother Yu, don't say any more, I understand. Yu Qianchou was gratified and said, it's good that you understand. If you want to retreat again, think about how miserable you were when you were being chased by the disciples of Heartless Palace in the ruins. If you were to encounter such a situation again, it would be impossible for someone to save your life all the time. You would have to rely on yourself. In life, you will either be on the chopping block or fish on the chopping block. You should constantly strive to improve yourself. What's a mere pressure worth mentioning? Shui Mingqing gradually raised his slightly lowered head. His eyes were clear and firm, and his fists that were tightly clenched in his sleeves slowly loosened. After Yu Qianchou noticed this change, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile, and he didn't say anything else. If this still couldn't make him pull himself together, then he was at most a piece of trash that couldn't be helped and should be silenced. The people who had been silently observing Shui Mingqing finally saw his appearance clearly. He stood there calmly, facing the elders of the sect with a calm expression. His slightly lowered gaze expressed his respect for the elders of the sect, but it also revealed a strong sense of self-confidence. It was rare for a young disciple who had yet to ascend to the immortal realm to have such determination under the attention of so many people. Many people's eyes lit up slightly. A trace of surprise flashed through Master Yifuzi's eyes. He realized that this young disciple, whose name he couldn't even remember, was actually a hidden sword. When he lowered his head, there was no difference between him and many ordinary young disciples, so much so that even Master Yifuzi had misjudged him. But when he raised his head slightly, that kind of strong self-confidence was definitely not something the other young disciples could compare with. Seeing the surprise in the eyes of the others, Master Yifuzi looked at Shui Mingqing again. Although Shui Mingqing was just standing there without saying a word, there was no doubt that his confident silence told everyone that he hadn't done anything that would bring shame to the sect. There was no need for him to defend himself. That would be an insult to him. There was no need to explain anymore. Master Yifuzi firmly believed that Shui Mingqing would not lose face for Skyward Palace. However, he wanted to know what had happened in the ruins of the gods and why he had come back alone. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong looked at each other with admiration in their eyes. If the two of them were faced with such a situation, they definitely wouldn't be able to handle it as easily as Shui Mingqing did. They would definitely be anxious to defend themselves. But look at him, that kind of bearing, this was the charm of a person. No wonder he could get 300 disciples to help him take revenge with just a call. Among his peers in the celestial world, Shui Mingqing was the only one who could do this. This friend was worth it. Du Karen's eyes flashed as he looked at Shui Mingqing and asked Du Feng, Du Feng, what did this Skyward Palace disciple do for us? Tell us so we can thank him. After Du Feng bowed to his father, he looked at Shui Mingqing and sighed, Brother Shui, what a heroic deed. Because the disciples of the Palace of Heaven had picked a 3 elements immortal fruit, they attracted the covetous eyes of the heartless palace disciples. After a series of attacks, he was the only one left among the disciples of the Palace of Heaven that had entered the divine ruin realm. What? Master Yafuzi's expression changed. He stared at Shui Mingqing and shouted, The others are all dead? Everyone was in an uproar as they looked at Elder Lu Tao of Heartless Palace in the air. Lu Tao slowly crossed his arms, a hint of pride on his face as he sneered without saying anything. Shui Mingqing's expression was solemn as he cupped his hands and said, Disciple is incompetent and failed to protect the other disciples. Disciple is willing to accept any punishment without complaint. On the side, Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up as he thought to himself, I didn't misjudge him. Sure enough, this kid is worth teaching. It seems like this show can go smoothly. Master Yafuzi was furious, but he suppressed it when he looked at Shui Mingqing. He looked up at the sky and shouted, Lu Tao, a disciple of your heartless palace dared to kill a disciple of Skyward Palace. How are you going to explain this? Lu Tao looked down and sneered, Master Yafuzi, don't tell me you don't know what's going on in the ruins of the gods. Don't tell me that your disciples have never killed disciples of other sects in the ruins of the gods. In the ruins of the gods, the disciples of each sect rely on their own abilities. Fighting and killing are common. If the sects don't let it go after that, then it will be very lively. I'm afraid there will never be a day of peace in the celestial world. Du Kairen grabbed the furious Master Yafuzi and glanced at Lu Tao in the sky. Brother Yafuzi, don't be impatient. There must be a sequel to this. Why don't you listen to it first? Then he turned to Du Feng and said, What happened next? Du Feng said in a deep voice, Brother Shui fought to the death with only one person left and finally escaped from the encirclement of the disciples of Heartless Palace. As for what happened after he escaped, we don't know either. Later on, my spirit cultivation sect, Mythical Fire Palace, and the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce also met the disciples of Heartless Palace. They joined forces with the other 6 sects and nearly 200 people wantonly robbed and killed in the ruins of the gods. When they saw our 3 sects, they didn't put us in their eyes at all. They actually surrounded our 3 sects and wanted to destroy our 3 sects for the treasures. On the side, Hu Lianqing immediately frowned and stared at the sky with a sneer, as expected of a disciple of Heartless Palace. They are really arrogant. Lu Tao, who was in the sky, snorted coldly as if he didn't care at all. Instead, he was proud of it. Continue. Du Kairen frowned. Du Feng nodded and said, At this critical moment, Brother Shui suddenly appeared. However, he didn't come alone this time. Instead, he was filled with the flames of revenge and contacted friends from over 300 sections. Over 300 people rushed over together and surrounded the disciples of Heartless Palace and the other 6 sects. Hui Yunlong, who was at the side, excitedly chimed in with his fists. Thus, our 3 sects, along with the 300 people that Brother Shui brought, worked together and defeated the 7 sects led by Heartless Palace. In the end, the 7 sects were completely annihilated. None of them were lucky enough to escape. That was called killing to my heart's content. The air and the ground instantly boiled up. No one thought that this group of young disciples would actually put on such an exciting show in the ruins of the gods. They really couldn't tell. The sneer on Lu Tao's face gradually froze and darkened. Everyone started whispering to each other. No one would think that Du Feng and Hui Yunlong were lying, and it was impossible for them to lie in such a situation. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Shui Mingqing, who was standing silently without making a fuss. Everyone couldn't believe that such a young disciple who hadn't reached the immortal stage had actually made friends with more than 300 sections. What kind of concept was this? The most commendable thing was that these friends from more than 300 sects could actually stand up for him when he was in trouble. Their friendship was not shallow. He had friends in more than 300 sects. Right now he was only at the soul formation stage. If he waited until his cultivation level increased in the future, in time his appeal would be incredible. Many people looked at Master Ye with faint envy in their eyes. They didn't expect that there would be such a talent among the rising stars of Skyward Palace. Who would dare to say that someone who could make so many friends had nothing to do with their ability and luck? Shui Mingqing still stood there calmly as if all the admiring gazes had nothing to do with him. In fact, he was excited, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. In his mind, he recalled the desolate and helpless scene in the valley, and his eyes became calmer and colder. Chapter 829. The more he acted like this, the more everyone revealed looks of praise. This kind of disciple really made their sect proud. Why didn't he come out? Huo Lianqing looked up at Lu Tao, who had a dark expression on his face and couldn't help but laugh. This is interesting, really interesting. Zai. There are actually people who like to slap their own faces. This is the disaster caused by arrogance. Everyone naturally knew who he was talking about. They looked at Lu Tao, who had a dark expression and looked like he wanted to eat someone. This was indeed too embarrassing. Lu Tao didn't have the face to stay here anymore. Moreover, the disciples who entered the divine ruin realm were all dead, so there was no point for him to stay any longer. Lu Tao looked at the few sects gathered below with resentment. He wanted to say something, but he realized that what he could say was blocked by what he had said before. If he continued to be angry, he would only be humiliating himself. He snorted coldly and turned into a beam of light that flew into the distance. Qi Fengxing, who was beside him, was dumbfounded. He slowly hid in the crowd in the air so that he wouldn't be too conspicuous. The remaining Heartless Palace disciples didn't have the face to stay here anymore. They all flew back to their shops silently. Lu Tao could leave, but they still had to stay to make a deal. Awesome. Huo Lianqing looked at Master Ya and laughed. Brother Master, this disciple of your sect is really proud. A hint of pride flashed across Master Ya's face. He stared at Shui Mingqing seriously and said, "Why don't you defend yourself?" Shui Mingqing took out the 2 3-element celestial fruits from his storage bracelet and offered them with both hands. He said woodenly, "Disciple is useless. All the brothers who came with me were sacrificed and only disciple came back alive. I couldn't get enough benefits for the sect and only brought back 2 3-element celestial fruits. Disciple really doesn't have the face to defend myself, and I'm afraid I'll lose the face of Skyward Palace. Elder, please punish me." Disciple will not have the slightest complaint and is willing to accept any punishment. His words of self-blame made everyone sigh incessantly. To be able to avenge his fellow disciples in that kind of situation, and even bring back 2 valuable immortal herbs alone, what else could they say about having such a disciple? If the Palace of Heaven still blamed him for this, it would be too unreasonable. Such a disciple would only be meritorious and not make any mistakes. Master Ye's expression changed. He silently put away the 2 3-origin celestial fruits in his hand. He stared at Shui Mingqing and pursed his lips as he said, "Whether you're punished or not, someone from the sect will deal with it when we return. Which faction are you from?" Shui Mingqing respectfully replied, "Disciple's aptitude is poor and I'm temporarily cultivating with my fellow brothers and sisters. I'm not qualified to enter any branch to cultivate." A hint of joy flashed on Master Ye's face as he suppressed his voice and asked, "Since that's the case, are you willing to join my lineage and be my disciple?" Shui Mingqing looked at Master Yafu with an extremely excited expression. He nervously said in disbelief, This disciple naturally wishes for it. It's just that this disciple's aptitude is stupid and I'm guilty. I'm afraid, since you're willing then it's settled." Yufuzi immediately made the decision. Damn it. He's already a senior disciple, so what's the point of being guilty? Yu Qianchou looked at Shui Mingqing with a smile. He found that his efforts had not been in vain. He had finally gotten off to a good start. Anyone who knew a little about the Palace of Heaven knew that disciples who joined the Palace of Heaven would gather together to cultivate. Only after their cultivation broke through to the immortal realm would they be picked by the various lineages. It was very rare for someone to be picked at the soul formation stage. Generally, only those with exceptional aptitude would be picked and nurtured by the various lineages. In fact, most of the sects in the celestial realm used this method to nurture their disciples. Those who knew the situation knew that elders like Master Yafu already had a large number of disciples and grand disciples, and they had long since stopped accepting disciples. Now that he had accepted another disciple, Shui Mingqing's seniority in Chaotian Palace would be very high. Many celestial level masters in Chaotian Palace would have to call him martial uncle and martial ancestor. This was really a meteoric rise. In fact, from Master Yafu's point of view, such an excellent disciple was rare in the world. Regardless of how talented Shui Mingqing was, he would be proud to say that he was his disciple in the future. If he didn't take this opportunity to take him, he was afraid that once he returned to the sect, he would definitely be snatched away by some thick-skinned old fellows. This was called the pavilion closest to the water enjoys moonlight first. This. Shui Mingqing felt like he was dreaming. He didn't know what to do for a long time. Master Yafa's expression gradually became ugly. If he said that he would accept Shui Mingqing but Shui Mingqing didn't agree, then he would lose a lot of face. Brother Shui, hurry up and greet Master. Du Feng anxiously urged. Hu Yunlong also excitedly waved his arms. Brother Shui, hurry up and greet Master. Shui Mingqing immediately reacted. He took a deep breath, lifted the hem of his clothes and solemnly knelt on the ground. Disciple Shui Mingqing greets Master. Then he bowed and kowtowed 3 times. Master Yafu was very happy but his face remained calm. He raised his hand and said, "Get up." Shui Mingqing stood up. He could no longer hide the excitement in his heart. He really didn't expect that by following Yu Qianzhou's instructions, there would be a reaction so quickly. He had actually become the disciple of an elder of Skyward Palace. Was this a dream? Du Kairen and Huo Lianqing looked at each other, then they cupped their hands and laughed. Congratulations to Brother Yafu for accepting an outstanding disciple. This is really worthy of celebration. Master Yafu smiled and cupped his hands. The 2 of you are too polite. Whether he is an outstanding disciple or not will depend on his future efforts. Many people who were familiar with Master Yafu also congratulated him. Master Yafu smiled and cupped his hands in a reserved manner. Yu Qianzhou's eyes narrowed slightly. He should be happy for Shui Mingqing, but he couldn't bring himself to be happy. He thought about the disciples who died in battle for the honor and interests of their respective sects in the ruins of God. Glory always belonged to the living. As for the dead, the past was the past. But who would want to die? They had no choice. Even if they dragged out an ignoble existence, only death awaited them. Mu Tianjiao silently peeked at Yu Qianzhou. She had experienced things in the ruins of God, and with a woman's innate intuition she had a faint feeling. She felt that everything Shui Mingqing had now was given to him by this man. What she had was also given to her, and it was the same for Du Feng and Hu Yunlong. While everyone was enjoying the joy of success, he stood silently at the side. Mu Tianjiao really wanted to walk to his side and accompany him. She wanted to accompany this mysterious and lonely man who came from an unknown place. However, people couldn't live in this world without any face. Furthermore, she was a woman, so she could only silently pay attention. After exchanging greetings, everyone was about to leave when Yu Qianzhou frowned and glanced at Mu Tianjiao. He turned his head and coughed. Brother Yunlong, have you forgotten the promise the 3 sects made when we joined forces? Mu Tianjiao hurriedly waved her hands at the crowd. No need. Our 4 links Chamber of Commerce has already taken advantage of you. We don't dare to be greedy. Yu Qianzhou raised his brows. How can this be called greedy? Didn't we do anything? Although our 4 links Chamber of Commerce is small in number, we still have to agree on what we have agreed upon. Whether we will do it or not, we still have to say something. What's the meaning of leaving without saying a word? In the air, Wan Ling and the 3 elders of the Eternal Ancient Chamber of Commerce looked at each other. Ever since Yu Qianzhou came out, they had been paying attention. Seeing that Yu Qianzhou actually dared to show disrespect to the mythical Flame Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect, they became more and more curious. Du Feng and Hu Yunlong immediately thought of this and hurriedly ran back with a face full of embarrassment. They cupped their hands in apology. Du Feng smiled bitterly. Brother Yu, don't blame me. It wasn't intentional. I just forgot for a moment. Please wait a moment. Under the curious gazes of the crowd, the 2 of them hurriedly ran back to their father's side and whispered in each other's ears. Du Kairen and Huo Lianqing looked at Yu Qianzhou with surprise. After that, Du Kairen looked at Huo Lianqing and smiled. Each generation is stronger than the previous. Looks like the immortal world is welcoming an era of geniuses. Huo Lianqing nodded. We naturally have to honor our promise. We won't take advantage of this. He waved at Du Kairen. Brother Du, let's go have a drink. Juniors' matters can be left to them. That's what I was thinking. Du Kairen laughed. The 2 of them flashed away. Shui Mingqing whispered a few words to Master Ya. After getting his approval, he walked over and cupped his hands. Brother Yunlong, Miss Mu, I'll go back with Master first. If there's anything, you can find me at the Skyward Palace's shop. We've gone through life and death together. If there's a chance, let's not be estranged. Master Ye nodded with a faint smile. This disciple's character was not bad. No wonder he had so many friends. He chuckled. Shui Mingqing, what do you mean by these few days? In the future you can invite more friends to our Skyward Palace. Our Skyward Palace will not neglect our friends. The four of them saluted Master Ye. Many thanks, Senior. Master Ye looked around with a smug expression, then turned into a streak of light and flew away. Shui Mingqing cupped his hands towards them apologetically. He was especially calm and collected as he looked at Yu Qianqiu. The two of them quickly exchanged a few words through voice transmissions before Shui Mingqing flew away. After greeting each other, the three parties headed to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's shop. Looking at the empty shop, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong subconsciously exchanged a glance. Then they swiftly sorted out the things they had obtained from their trip to the Divine Ruin Realm. According to the previous agreement, they had to split the loot equally, but Mu Tianjiao was adamant. Unable to dissuade Du Feng and Hui Yunlong, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's share was about 20 billion divine-grade spirit stones. Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong exchanged a glance. They didn't expect the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to join hands with the mythical Fire Palace and spiritual cultivation sect in the Divine Ruin Realm. They didn't expect to obtain so many treasures. From the beginning to the end, Mu Bing was looking at his daughter with a complicated expression. Chapter 830. After distributing the loot, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong bid their farewells. They had just returned and had their own matters to deal with. The only problem left was to pay the commission to the people they recruited. When they hired these people, Mu Tianjiao had said that she would share 1/10 of the Divine Ruin Realm's estimated value. Including Mu Tianjiao, there were a total of 17 people who had returned. 1/10 of the 20 billion divine-grade spirit stones was equivalent to 2 billion. As for those who were already dead, they naturally had no right to share. 100 million divine-grade spirit stones for each person was hard to believe for the group of rogue cultivators. At the same time, they were a little apprehensive, wondering if the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would honor their original promise. This was not a small sum of money. However, Mu Tianjiao was indeed a man of her word. After calculating with everyone, she pondered for a moment before asking, "Everyone knows my Four Links Chamber of Commerce's difficulties. We can't afford to take out cash. Whether everyone is willing to take out immortal herbs of equal value or wait for the items to be sold, it's up to everyone. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce will not force you." Everyone exchanged glances. Yu Qianqiu stared at them indifferently, saying, "I'm not a greedy person. The fact that I'm able to get so many items this time is entirely due to the mythical Fire Palace and spiritual cultivation sect. I don't want the small change after the items are sold. Just give me 100 million divine-grade spirit stones." Under his malicious gaze, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Immediately someone said meekly, "I'm not greedy either, but I don't want to wait. Can you give me 100 million divine-grade spirit stones now?" Mu Tianjiao looked meaningfully at Yu Qianqiu, then smiled at that person, saying, "No problem." She then picked out an immortal herb of equal market value and handed it to that person. After both parties returned the Jade Archive, that person immediately ran away without looking back. With someone taking the lead in completing the transaction, the others immediately made the same request. Mu Tianjiao did not make things difficult for them, quickly fulfilling her promise. In the blink of an eye, the group dispersed. At this time, only Yu Qianqiu and the silent Tao Zhong were left among the people Si Tong had hired. Mu Tianjiao looked at Tao Zhong and smiled sweetly. In the ruins of God, Tao Zhong had stood up several times in times of crisis to help stabilize the hearts of the people. If not for him, this team would have been scattered before Yu Qianqiu returned. "I really have to thank you this time, otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to return." Mu Tianjiao bowed. "If you have any requests, please tell me. As long as it's within my ability, I'll do my best to satisfy them." Tao Zhong pondered for a moment before slowly saying, "I wish to end my life as a loose cultivator. I wonder if I can join your Four Links Chamber of Commerce?" Everyone in the shop was stunned at the same time. After Mu Tianjiao recovered from her surprise, she looked at her father. Mu Bing recovered and nodded with a smile. "If you don't mind my Four Links Chamber of Commerce being down and out, I welcome you to join us. Tao Zhong immediately smiled and cupped his hands. Thank you for taking me in, President. From today onwards, I, Tao Zhong, will wholeheartedly serve the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. When the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was in dire straits, there was still someone willing to join them. Mu Bing and the other two immediately felt their spirits rise. Nan Tianlong even walked over and patted Tao Zhong's shoulder, saying excitedly, "Well done. We'll be a family from now on." Watching the lively atmosphere in the shop, Yu Qianzhou smiled faintly. This matter has come to an end. I should be able to get the 100 million divine grade spirit stones commission in a few days' time. This one will take his leave first. He cupped his fists at them and strode out of the shop. Yu Qianzhou. Mu Tianjiao stopped him. Under the astonished gazes of the others, she walked to Yu Qianzhou's side and bit her lip. I want to take up some of your time. There's something I want to discuss with you. What is it? Yu Qianzhou stood at the door and asked suspiciously. Mu Tianjiao turned to look at her father, then gestured outside. Can we find a quiet place to talk? What the hell is this girl doing? Yu Qianzhou paused for a second, then shrugged nonchalantly. Do as you wish. Mu Tianjiao leaped into the air and Yu Qianzhou followed closely behind her. The two of them quickly flew over the spacious plaza filled with rows of shops and entered deep into the boundless undulating stone mountains. Mu Tianjiao only landed on a towering stone mountain when she could no longer see the prosperity behind her and the desolation in front of her. Yu Qianzhou paused in midair, then landed on the stone hill with a puzzled expression. The petite Mu Tianjiao stood silently with her back facing him, her indigo dress fluttering in the wind, her silky hair fluttering in the wind. Yu Qianzhou's vigilant gaze swept over the rocky mountains around him, wondering why this woman brought him to such a remote place. If he was molested, no one would hear him even if he screamed himself hoarse. Mu Tianjiao, who had turned around, could not help but giggle when she saw him like that. Why are you so cautious? With your ability, are you afraid of me? Yu Qianzhou withdrew his thoughts, coughed and said, Miss Mu, what exactly do you want to talk about? Why do you have to come here to talk? I can see that you are not someone who lacks money. Mu Tianjiao stared at him and asked, Why do you want to help me? Yu Qianzhou was startled and did not know whether to laugh or cry. I don't lack money? Are you kidding me? I am simply too short of money. If not for money, why would I enter the divine ruin realm? Mu Tianjiao smiled and shook her head, saying, Answer me first, why are you helping me? Yu Qianzhou was speechless as he pointed around and said, Miss Mu, don't tell me you dragged me here just to ask this? Don't change the subject, answer me, Mu Tianjiao pressed. Yu Qianzhou touched his forehead and said weakly, All right. First, I did it for money. Second, although I am a kind-hearted person, I did not deliberately help you. I just went with the flow. Mu Tianjiao was silent. After a long time, she stared at him with sparkling eyes and bit her lip. Then what do you think of me? Yu Qianzhou's mouth opened slightly, stunned on the spot. Finally, he realized something. The corner of his mouth twitched and he said with a bitter smile, Miss Mu, I think you may have misunderstood. The reason why I helped you is not because I have any thoughts about you. To be honest, I just admire you for being so strong as a woman, so I helped you. There is absolutely no other intention. Mu Tianjiao's expression changed slightly and she said with a forced smile, So I was thinking too much. It seems that my charm is not enough to attract you. You can't say it like that. Yu Qianzhou spread his hands and frankly said, To be honest, you are very charming. I am very willing to take you to bed and molest you, but I believe you won't be willing to abandon you afterwards. I also don't want to do such a thing to a woman like you. These words were indeed frank, a bit too frank, causing a trace of embarrassment to flash across Mu Tianjiao's face. However, she was also a decisive person. She forced herself to calm down and said, Let's get back to the main topic. Is there a possibility that I can keep you in our Four Links Chamber of Commerce? Yu Qianzhou was speechless. Mu Tianjiao immediately waved her hand and explained, Don't misunderstand. It's not a matter between a man and a woman. I purely hope that you can join our Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Yu Qianzhou looked at her suspiciously and asked, Why do you want me to join the Four Links Chamber of Commerce? Because our Four Links Chamber of Commerce is in urgent need of talents to help us quickly get out of our predicament. I believe that you are one of the people we need, Mu Tianjiao said sincerely. Now that they were talking about serious matters, Yu Qianzhou immediately became impolite. He raised his eyebrows and said, "You think too highly of me. What do you think the Four Links Chamber of Commerce has that can attract me to join?" Mu Tianjiao bit her lip and said, "You can state the conditions you want and then we'll see if we can satisfy you." "I don't need to state any conditions." Yu Qianchou waved his hand and said with a smile, "Because I don't have the ability you speak of. I just want to be a free loose cultivator." "Miss Mu, did you call me here mainly to discuss this? Can't you reconsider?" As soon as the words left her mouth, she saw him shake his head and refuse without hesitation. Mu Tianjiao smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that our Four Links Chamber of Commerce will have a hard time retaining capable people." Yu Qianchou smiled noncommittally. He wasn't the kind of person who would be easily moved by others' sincerity. It depended on what the matter was. He didn't care whether the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was big or small. The main thing was that he couldn't submit to others anymore. Moreover, this was a small Four Links Chamber of Commerce. This wasn't a platform for him to display his ambitions. "Actually, I have a pretty good suggestion." Yu Qianchou smiled and said, "You should continue to maintain contact with the Spirit Cultivation Sect and Mythical Fire Palace. I believe it will be of great help to your Four Links Chamber of Commerce." "I'm afraid I can't reach them." Mu Tianjiao shook her head and smiled bitterly. "This isn't your style, Miss Mu. How would you know if you don't try?" Yu Qianchou cupped his fists and said, "All right, I still have matters to attend to. I'll take my leave first." With that said, he flew off into the sky without looking back. Mu Tianjiao looked at the departing figure and a haggard expression suddenly appeared on her face. After a moment of loss, she took a deep breath and gathered her spirit to fly back. At the entrance of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong arrived at almost the same time. The two of them looked at each other in surprise. Mu Bing quickly walked out and bowed. "Esteemed guests, please come in." Du Feng glanced inside and waved his hand. "Chairman Mu is too polite. I just happened to be passing by. I still have some matters to attend to. I'll come again in the future." On the side, Hui Yunlong directly asked, "Chairman Mu, where's Yu Qianchou? Where did he go?" Before Mu Bing could reply, someone already said, "Yu Qianchou has already left." The few of them turned and saw Mu Tianjiao smiling. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong's eyes lit up at the same time. After exchanging some pleasantries, Hui Yunlong asked again, "Miss Mu, do you know where Yu Qianchou went? I saw him heading in this direction. He should still be in this area." Mu Tianjiao said hesitantly. Hui Yunlong looked around and immediately cupped his fists and said, "Then I'll go look for him. I'll take my leave first." With that he left. Du Feng also cupped his fists and bid farewell.